my kitchen.
Right.
All right, guys, at 7 o'clock, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you for everybody coming. We made room for everybody out in the audience. Next week, we have several proclamations and several public hearings, so we will just get right to it. If there's no comments on the proclamations, we'll move right into our first public hearing, which is an ordinance to consider granting a first franchise amendment to Level 3 Communications of Virginia Incorporated. And next week's public hearing, the council is going to follow the bid process once again, like we have the last couple of times. It will require a roll call vote. I'll try to remember to remind you ahead of time again next week. All bids received will be entered into the record, and Tammy Chastain is here and ready. She's our Deputy Director of Public Works for the record, and she's got our staff report.
Hi, Tammy. So this is much different than the one last week, but this is on your Exhibit A. I don't have anything to show. It is very simple, like 68 linear feet between their existing conduit on the east side of town from Herndon Parkway to 355 Herndon Parkway. So it's basically just to extend their route that little bit. They do pay right-of-way use fees. We do expect this to increase that right-of-way use fee. They pay about $1,000 a month on that. So that's essentially.
That's basically it.
That's pretty much it.
Are there questions or comments for Tammy on this one? Anybody? Let's see.
Why are we doing this? I mean, is it for
To
a
provide
project of ours
service
or theirs?
it's to provide service to somebody in this facility.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. So that brings us to our second public hearing, which is long awaited. It's an ordinance to consider the development plan of number 1701. Note that we are in 19. 1701, an application for a Herndon Transit-Oriented Core Development Plan to allow a mixed-use development at 555 Herndon Parkway. The owner is 555 Herndon LLC, and the representative is Frank J. Poley. Did I say that correct? All right, thank you. Senior Vice President for Penzance Management LLC. We have had some comments entered into the record. I'll recognize Bryce Perry, who is our Deputy Director of Community Development for the staff report. And this is, I believe, our first big application for the HTOC building. So
That is correct.
we're finally here, guys. Thank you, Bryce.
My presentation is just a little bit longer than Tammy's.
I guess so. That's why we let Tammy do hers first.
Honestly, there's going to be a lot of information to go through here. So while staff's been working on this for quite a while, it's new to you all. So if I'm blowing through this a little too fast, if I need to stop, if there's any further explanations needed, just go ahead and let me know. And we'll pause as needed. Okay, so this is an application for development plan, case number DP 17-01, and this would entitle the property located at 555 Herndon Parkway to redevelop up to a 4.3 FAR as floor area ratio with a mixed-use development. I'm going to go through some slides here with talking about what's out there now, and then we're going to get into a few process slides, and then we're going to get into the actual details of what's being proposed here. So the existing site is over a little over 4.3 acres. It's bound by the Herndon Parkway to the north, has a little less than 400 feet of frontage along Herndon Parkway, and then the Dulles Toll Road to the south, which with a little less than 500 linear feet of frontage along that side. It is currently improved with an approximately 90,000 square foot low-rise office building with surface parking and some landscape buffers. It's essentially a pretty typical suburban office park, and all of the surrounding properties share that type of site condition.
Hey, Bryce, real quick, can you point out where the platform is going to come down, just for the audience that may not know?
It's right. It's just off the
Okay,
image.
so
Actually,
just off
it's
the
right
image.
over here.
That's what I thought.
So this is it's essentially the closest property that's to the metro that's not actually going to be immediately abutting the metro. So it's about 300 feet or so from the property line over to where that metro touchdown is going to be on the north side of the Herndon station. The property does slope a little bit, slopes downhill from west to east, And as we get into the developments, conceptual drawings, you'll be able to understand that a little bit better. Property is zoned Planned Development Transportation Oriented Core, PDTOC. That's everything that's in the tealish color, I guess, on this slide. It's one of 9 properties that are within the Herndon Transit Oriented Core. The first to seek a development plan. The only other redevelopment that's occurred in the HTOC, the H-top, would be the Stanley Martin Metro Square development at the northern edge of this area. The area was master planned as part of the Metro Rail area study, and then the Herndon Transit Oriented Core Plan, which is shown in the inset here on this slide. The closest zoning designation that's not PDTOC is office and light industrial. That's all the purple area to the north into the east. Those are essentially all suburban office parks. The closest residential is about a quarter of a mile away. That's the single-family detached neighborhood of the Downs to the north, and of course the new residential over at Stanley Martin. Okay, so when reviewing development plans in the H-top, there's 3 things that staff looks at. First is the regulation. The H-top development plans are regulated by the zoning ordinance, obviously, more particularly section 7850.8, which is the PDTOC zoning district ordinance. Within that ordinance, there's code language that allows for a 0.7 FAR by right, a 1.2 FAR with a special exception, and the maximum 4.3 FAR with the development plan. It also includes specific standards that have to be met to be able to achieve that maximum FAR, each of which are addressed in the staff report. Development plans are guided by the 2030 Comprehensive Plan, and also the Herndon Metro Rail area study and the H-top plan that's included as part of that. And those documents really set the general planning principles and planning goals for both the district and particular developments in the district. And lastly, development plans are informed by, of course, transportation analysis, utility infrastructure analysis, and analysis to impacts to services such as schools, emergency services, parks and recreation, things like that. Those analyses did occur as part of that original study. Back in 2011, 2012 is the time frame for that. And again, in relationship to this exact project, they were conducted. The review of HTOC plans follow a very specific project process. It's essentially the same as a rezoning project, it's like a zoning map amendment. So there's a number of staff reviews that occur first. The project goes through an informal architectural review board review. And the neighborhood meeting is hosted by the applicant. That's a requirement of the zoning ordinance. In this case, the neighborhood meeting occurred on January 23rd. And it was actually quite good turnout. I think it was around almost 40 people attended that meeting.
Our attachment 9 has that info, right?
Yes, thank you. And then, of course, it goes to Planning Commission review and recommendation, and then lastly to Town Council for the legislative act on it. If the development plan is approved by Town Council, it then goes through a series of administrative reviews. There's an administrative site plan review. There's also the formal architectural review board submission, which of course then goes to their work session and a public hearing. And then lastly, the permitting. For this case, that's wrong. The Planning Commission review occurred at their work session and public hearing in January. It was continued at that January public hearing. And then, this is incorrect, it says March, it was in February when the Planning Commission saw it again at their work session and public hearing and acted on providing a recommendation for approval. At that meeting, there is an attachment number 2 is the Planning Commission resolution. That resolution recommends approval with 2 amendments, one addressing the design of the mid-block pedestrian passages and one addressing the concepts for creating a unique Herndon identity as part of this development. The resolution also encouraged continued emphasis on high-quality building and landscape architecture and urban design. But there's, and a little bit later on in my presentation, I'll go through in a little bit more detail what those amendments actually mean and how they've been addressed. The Architectural Review Board first saw it in their December 2018 work session. They did have a number of comments regarding the designs of the storefronts, the designs of the garage facades, the overall material palette, and the open space surface treatments. And the applicant went back and made revisions to the building elevation, to the building design, to the open space design, to the urban space, to the urban design. Addressing each of those comments, went back to the ARB at their February work session and presented those revised drawings to them, and at that point they assessed that their comments were satisfied and that in their opinion the project was in general compliance with the architectural and urban design guidelines for each document. And the drawings that went to that second ARB meeting are the same drawings that went to Planning Commission in February and the same drawings that are still in the development plan currently. So those haven't changed since ARB saw them. Okay, finally getting to the project itself. We're going to see some perspective renderings and some building elevations and some plan views here, starting with a perspective rendering here and a little inset plan view. The project, to summarize, quite frankly, it includes 3 buildings to be built in 3 phases. These buildings are designed in a way that will allow for any sequence and phasing, and the phasing would be dependent on market conditions. So essentially there's no set schedule for when each phase may or may not be constructed. I'm going to be speaking about them in terms of phase A, B, and C, but they might not necessarily occur in that order. Building A is a mid-rise residential building with some ground floor retail. It's what's called a stick-on podium, meaning that it's wood frame on top of concrete podium. The podium is mostly comprised of a structured parking garage, and as I mentioned, some retail and amenity space also on the ground floor. Building C, or phase C, is in the southeast corner of the site. That is a high-rise office building and sits on top of the podium that is in that area mostly structured garage.
Is that the office? Because in this building C says it's the residential and retail.
That is the office.
It's
B.
The office is
Oh, B. You're saying B.
I'm saying B if I didn't say
Yeah.
B.
Sorry.
I
My
think you said
fault.
C, but that's okay.
Did I say C?
Oh, okay.
I think you said,
Okay, sorry
So this
about
is
that.
B office,
This is
got
B.
it. Yes.
C is the high-rise residential. Again, sits on that podium that's mostly consists of the garage, and this building also has some retail and active uses wrapped around that on the ground floor. This is at the southeast corner of the project, the northeast corner of the project. I've mentioned structured parking with each phase. Each phase, again, each phase can be built independent of the other phase, but at full build out, as designed, the garage would, each garage would connect into the adjacent garage, and at full build out, it would operate and function as a single garage throughout the whole development. That garage is both above ground and below ground. It's about 3.5 above, 4.5 below. It does take up, as I mentioned, it does take up most of the podium, with the exception of the ground floor and the floor above the ground floor on the north half of the project, which is retail space and backup house space, amenity space, lobby space. Actually, what's a good thing to point out here, actually a couple things. One is, I mentioned the cross slope on the property. This building section here shows that on the ground floor on the west side is a full level above the ground floor on the east side. And this also demonstrates the geology of the site and what they're dealing with. The rock is much more shallow on the west half of the site than it is on the east half of the site, which is the reason why they can go much deeper on the garage on the east side. Okay, this plan view here shows a little bit more detail. The property, access to the property is gained off of 3 entrances off of Herndon Parkway. The main entrance, which is the western entrance, would have full turn movements, so it's right in, right out, left in, left out for vehicles. Possibly not with the construction of the first phase, but definitely with the construction of the second phase, a traffic signal would be warranted and required at this location for it to be able to continue to operate. There is another entrance sort of mid-block here. This would be a right in, right out only for vehicles. And then the easternmost entrance also right in, right out for vehicles. The vehicle access in general is gained via this loop road that follows the property line on 3 sides, and then this center road here. Each of those roads have garage entrances. The big blue arrows are the garage entrances. There's one on off of each road, at least one. I also wanted to point out on this the loading bays, which are off of those side streets. There's one here, there's one over here, and there is one over here. And this is also a good visual for where the private amenity space would be. In that it's mostly concentrated in outdoor amenity space, I should say. It's mostly concentrated on the podium level, the roof of the podium. So all of these green spaces here is a podium top green space and amenity space. That covers that. Here I've highlighted just the areas that are dedicated really just to pedestrian access. So these are streetscapes that have a fairly traditional urban design with wide sidewalks and a tree verge to allow for some canopy trees. And along most of the site, there's also a landscape verge up against the building to allow for trees and shrubs also between the sidewalk and the building. And there's also this center plaza area here, which is where most of the open space design is concentrated. I'm going to show a little bit better visuals of that later on in the presentation and speak about it a little bit more. But it's a lot larger space that does offer some passive recreation and programmable spaces. Here, this is just to highlight where the vehicle access points would be on the loop road in that center street.
And I would add that in the future, as the parcels on either side of it are developed, they will be sharing those same side streets. So, in fact, the one on the west side that's on the left, they'll be sharing the entrance as they do today. This is reconfigured. And then eventually it will actually become part of their site. They'll build the other half of that street. On the east side, to the right, the access to those 2 parcels during certain phases of this development will continue to be separate, but eventually that too will merge into one street.
That's a very good point, thanks. The edge of the property line here, where the road is built to, would abut existing grade. That would then allow for, when the adjacent properties redevelop, allow for them to construct essentially a street just as wide as what you see here. And then when that happens, these 2-way streets would convert to 1 parking lane and 1 travel lane. has half street section, and then the other developer would do that one travel lane and then another parking lane. That makes sense. The development plan offers possible development scenario. However, there is some flexibility in the square footage, the use square footages, and also the building sizes. This is taken directly out of the development plan set. It offers some massing diagrams and a table for how those different uses break up per building. The approximate square footage in the development plan, which is the largest massing model shown here, includes 220,000 square feet of residential in Building A, 8,000 square feet of retail. Building B, the office building, has 325,000 square feet. And Building C has 255,000 square feet of residential and 5,000 retail. The program also sets some minimums here. Again, this is market driven, so if the level of retail shown in the development plan, if the market, if there's no demand in the marketplace for it, then they theoretically could go as low as the numbers shown and highlight here on the column to the far right. And this massing diagram here shows what it would look like if the applicant opts to go with all of those minimums. There's also a scenario here shown that would allow for the maximum height of the office building, right? The zoning ordinance allows for an up to 275-foot high office building. That would probably be like 400,000 square foot office building. So if there's an office tenant that needs that kind of space, the program might change, and we might see a taller office building, which would then mean some shorter residential buildings, because again, they're capped at 4.3 FAR. The next few slides here are going to go through building design and open space design. This is the north elevation, obviously showing the height variation here, and it's a good view of the retail spaces that wrap that ground floor on the north half of the project, and that center plaza area. The west elevation with Building A in the foreground and B and C in the background. Along the ground floor, you go from a retail space to a backup house space. Here's the loading bay. This is a garage and pedestrian entrance. And then this is an open garage area down through here. This is a good exhibit showing how Building A is carved up to allow for that podium top amenity space. I believe the conceptual design is showing a pool in this location. The south elevation, again, Building A on the left, Building B, the office building, on the right. The podium here and the ground floors here are all open garage. This is a dedicated pedestrian passage. This is the loading bay, and this is the entrance into the garage. This is a good time to stop for a second and mention that as proposed, the project does include a request for a zoning modification. The zoning ordinance requires 65 feet tower separation between buildings. Building A and Building B here, in some areas, is less than 65 feet. So the request is to allow for a reduction in 55 feet for that tower separation.
To
Between
55 feet?
55.
Between A and B?
Between A and B, and there's two locations.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying.
A and B seems like would be where's the widest.
And it's really, there's certain pinch points. It's not that across the whole way. There's
Okay.
just certain points where it goes below. And the east elevation is that other area where it's really at certain points, at the tightest points, it does get below that 65 foot requirement. This elevation is on the ground floor. That podium level again is mostly open garage. We have a garage entrance here, a dedicated pedestrian entrance here, loading bay here, and the retail starts around this area.
Did you say the garages were connected?
Yes.
The 3 garages?
Yes. The applicant has worked quite closely with staff on making sure that the open space design is really the high quality and really is the engaging and inviting and welcoming environment that we want for the H-type area. So this shows two areas of the open space, mostly the streetscape along Herndon Parkway. The perspective on the top, which is looking at the property from the northwest, shows the improvements on Herndon Parkway to include the two-way off-street cycle track and public sidewalk, and it also shows sidewalk around the edges of the building, and of course the landscaping, cafe seating, and other site furnishings. This is the view, again along Herndon Parkway, but from the other side, from the northeast side. You've got the cycle track, public sidewalk, and this shows a fairly substantial wall that's required to accommodate that cross slope across the property. So the street, the curb line will continue down the street, but that first floor, that ground floor of the property starts to rise up a little bit as you go down the property line. And so there would be stairs necessary here, and there's also stairs on the other side as well.
It's also there. It's flush with that central plaza area, so that would allow any handicap access as well. So the handicap access is accounted for.
And this is that center plaza area, which includes a lawn area, a decking area, shade trees, again, a lot of seating opportunities. I mentioned passive recreation and programmable space. There's also the design of the road in this area really is meant to continue to the plaza and connect both retail areas. So here the street has no curb. It's protected, the sidewalk's protected by bollards, and a decorative paver treatment is used in the roadway.
I was gonna ask that, so is this gonna be treated so that it's clear that, hey, there are gonna be people walking here? It's not a road to fly by in your car?
Right.
That's the idea.
That's the idea, and so when a car is entering off of Herndon Parkway into this plaza area, they actually have to rise above curb to enter it, and then the plaza's level with the road. So there's a lot of strong visual cues for the motorist indicating that you've now entered something different here, and it's really a shared space at that point.
Looks a lot like Mosaic District visually, and that seems to function pretty well.
I mentioned those two planning commission recommended amendments earlier. One was to, well, early on in the planning commission process, they had recommended that mid-block pedestrian passages, dedicated pedestrian passages, be added to the project. It was not initially, it was on the west side of the project, but there was not one on the east side and the south side. So the applicant did work those into the project and design them and include them as shown here. Planning Commission did want to see some further refinement into the design to just really ensure that these are going to be well-lit, comfortable, inviting areas for pedestrians. And so what didn't make the dispatch, it was not in the report, but the applicant has revised the proffers to include a new proffer, essentially addressing the concern by Planning Commission to work with staff to further refine the design of these pedestrian passages. It's kind of hard to tell from this, but the arrow here shows where the pedestrian passage would be mid-block on that south side. And so this is from the sidewalk on the outside of the building. And then as you walk through, then you come out into the center plaza area, and this is what it would look like. And then down here from the arrow shows approximately where the east pedestrian passage would be on the east side. This is what it would look like through on the outside of the project, and then this is what it looks like on the inside as you enter into that center plaza area. This one is is strictly a pedestrian passage all the way through. This one over here passes through the garage and also has to go up a level because of that grade difference on the property. The other amendment that Planning Commission included in their resolution was to design concepts for explaining how this project would reinforce a unique Herndon identity. And the applicant responded by including this sheet into the actual development plan set. And so this talks about incorporating Herndon-specific streetscape designs, making sure that the signage coordinates and reinforces the town's sign programs, creating focal points and artwork that would be specific to town, and incorporating design elements that tie into the town's history and heritage. The application does include a proffer statement, outline of which is shown here. I'm not really going to go through each of these. I did want to point out that, well, for one, the development plan is proffered. There's a lot of proper language regarding the design of the project, both the building design and the open space design. But one of which includes, the first one listed there is the phasing of the project. Because there's no real set schedule for when each phase would be built, there was a lot of focus early on with trying to understand exactly what the interim phases might look like if building A, C or build, or building B and A or build, what the rest of the site would look like. So that's not only addressed in the proffers, but that's addressed in the development plan as well. There's several sheets that are dedicated to that. There's proffers regarding uses, which really reinforce that table that I had up earlier that's in the development plan. There's a number of proffers regarding transportation. There's a monetary contribution for off-site transportation improvements. There's a proffer addressing the traffic signal on Herndon Parkway that would be actually shared between this property and the adjacent property to the west. There's a proffer regarding transportation demand management, and in that it actually sets specific single occupancy vehicle trip reduction goals. There are proffers regarding both green building practices and green infrastructure practices. There's proffers for monetary contributions regarding the town's sanitary sewer system, proffers for on-site and off-site parks and recreation. There's a proper contribution for Fairfax County Schools and one for Fairfax County Fire and Rescue. And those last several that are listed here really, I would say, probably say that they're a little more standard proffers for this type of development. So, some of the things that we were essentially still coordinating on with the applicant at the time of the staff report. Well, the Herndon identity concepts that was included in the development plan that you all have, and staff does support those concepts that are included in there. The pedestrian passage design, that has now been addressed in the proffers. However, those proffers did not go out in the dispatch. We will have them prepared and signed and ready for you all to review as part of your public hearing
Those
dispatch.
just came in the last couple days, right?
Correct.
The last couple items, that's what I thought.
Staff did have some requests for clarification on the transportation demand management work plan, which was submitted as a requirement of the development plan of the HDOT. And there was also some requests for some clarification in the TIA, the traffic impact analysis. The applicant's traffic consultant got both of those documents in late last week, and we were able to have our traffic consultant review them, and the lingering clarifications that were needed have all been addressed at this point. So at this point, staff does not really have any further comments on this application, and is preparing a draft ordinance also to be included in your public hearing dispatch. And So staff is, at this point, recommending approval of this application, given that the lingering issues here have been addressed.
Great. Questions or comments from council? Signy?
My biggest question is the 65 feet. Why is that 65 feet between the buildings there, and why is it okay to change that? Is it a safety issue, or is it a visual thing, or?
It was a design standard that went into the zoning ordinance to, I would say probably for light and air purposes, to ensure that, just to ensure that the people who work there, the people that work there are getting the appropriate amount of light and air.
So is the reason that it's slightly less, that the space in between the buildings is slightly less in places because of those baffles or whatever they were that stand out from the wall in the visual there, or is there some other?
That's part of it. I'm not certain that I could say that's necessarily all of it. The number 65 was selected based on some research staff had done back during the comprehensive plan amendment. And when we were doing that research, we found various jurisdictions have quite a range of tower separation requirements. 65 was probably, as I remember, this is going back a few years, one of the more generous ones. And in the application, when the applicant requested the modification, they provided the zoning administrator with examples in Tyson's, I believe, and some other local developments where the development has been developed and it is only 55 feet apart for the towers, and it still appears to be appropriate and adequate for the intent.
And have you had a chance to look at them in person, or just
I think in one case, we were already familiar with it, we hadn't seen it, but in the others we have.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? It's a lot to digest in one sitting. Anybody?
Jen, can I just add directly to that? One of the buildings referenced, I actually worked in that building, the West Park building, and that's the one that's 40 feet apart, and yeah, I don't remember it feeling like it was crowded. But yeah, glad that we know that, because that's part of what I just read the resolution like twice, part of what we're gonna approve next week is really, and that includes the change of the 60 to 55.
Yes, in the ordinance that staff will prepare for you, it will state that you, if you so choose to approve this, that you are approving it with the proffers.
Right.
Because the proffers are going to travel with this land forever. And also with this modification.
Right. And that modification doesn't require, like, going back through a long process? We can just include that in this ordinance and have it?
It was advertised, so it was part of the advertisement. The zoning administrator did review it, and it will be in the ordinance of approval if you so approve it. And that's all that needs to be legal.
Other questions or comments, Sheila?
So when you talk about there's no guarantee which order they'll go or how long it would take, is there any kind of range? Are we talking about a 5-year period to build it out, a 20-year period?
No, there's not a range. It is market driven, which is not unusual. In a lot of the rezonings we're seeing along the Silver Line and in other areas of the county as well, you don't see timelines necessarily imposed. So that is not unusual. It could happen relatively quickly. There's no guarantee of this, but it's generally believed that the first building you would see being built would probably be Building A, which would be an apartment building. Currently, there's market demand. As for the others, it's really a matter of the market driving the development. And that's also the case in the range of densities that you see here. And again, that's very common along the corridor to be providing that range so that a developer can meet the market, particularly when you're looking at the office. As we all know, there hasn't been a strong demand for office as there was in the past of late. And by providing within the approval that allowance for a range of density, that means that the developer can react if somebody is in the marketplace looking for, say, a building of 250,000 square feet versus 400,000 or vice versa. That allows them to meet that market demand and get a tenant in there and build a building.
Other questions, comments? Cesar, and then followed by Jen. No, go ahead. Well, Jen's already spoken, so go ahead.
I just want to clarify what I heard. Probably building A would go first. Help me, let's double click on this thing called market-driven condos, apartments. I heard apartments.
Yes, there is, I don't think there's anything, as I remember, within the proffers that would keep that from being condo. But it could be apartments or it could be condos.
There's a shortage of housing in the county. I'm not talking affordable housing, I'm talking probably normal, middle class. What's the targeted range if we're letting the markets dictate this in Fairfax County, the proximity to the metro? Is there a target range for these things, or this is way too early to even scope out?
That would probably be a better question for the developer next week. They could probably give you,
So we're not imposing anything?
we're not
that doesn't
imposing,
hire. Are we asking,
asking for,
suggesting a range?
no, we don't normally on land use matters speak to final cost of product.
Well, then perhaps range of product or,
Range of product,
yeah,
size of units.
yes.
We can try to obtain that information between now and next week.
I just think I would be more comfortable just knowing that. I mean, obviously we can't predict or hold someone to a price, but the better, the more options I think on the table, I think that would help address some of the concerns that I hear in terms of people being able to actually live within proximity to what they want to do as far as work and play and maintain a quality of life. And just to double check, so it was 13,000 square feet of retail in the combined?
In
Correct.
combined.
My gut says that's not enough, but
It is a small number.
It's, and this is actually one of the challenges that Herndon has compared to, say, some of the sites in Reston or at Innovation. We have a 38-acre Herndon transit-oriented core that's broken up into individual ownership. And in other places, they may have a whole 38 acres for one development. And I believe one of the challenges that we've been hearing from the development community, but seeing on our own as well, is the fact that retail does do better when it's combined, consolidated, and that's not how our metro area is developing. So what you have are these individual lots that are trying to incorporate a mixed use schedule into the development, but it's difficult, particularly for the first one out of the box in this case, to pledge to do a significant amount of retail because they don't have some of the synergy that you would normally have in a larger development. So that's been one of the struggles, and again, it's the applicant has built in somewhat of a range. It's a fairly tight range in the case of retail here. They have spoken to the fact that if they get a particular tenant, that, you know, they could be at the upper end of that range, but,
Office tenant.
no, but there's retail range too, I was talking about.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right. The applicant had also talked about trying to maximize the retail that they can put on there as amenity for office tenants.
So they are looking at that. But that's one of the, I would say that's probably the largest struggle that we have as this HTOP builds out, is the
Yeah.
fact that it's all separate.
I just think if our desired outcome is more family-oriented versus being more transient, younger segment, that certainly needs to be considered. And by the way, I'm open to either, but we need to think about what it is we want in that location. I tend to think it's probably more beneficial if more families are there, but that retail just won't be enough. But, just me. Thank you.
Other,
Yep.
Jen, or Bill and Pradeep, you haven't had an opportunity.
Nope,
You
go
got
ahead.
anything? Oh, okay.
The
Thanks,
PowerPoint
Jen.
that you just presented, I don't think we have.
We don't have it.
We don't have
that. Can we get that?
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
sure, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jen, thank you. Trying to make sure everybody
That's
gets a
okay.
chance.
So, in the resolution, there's a super minor spelling mistake at the bottom. It says unique identify instead of, I think we mean identity at the end. And I guess as I look at the resolution, what I'm struggling with is like, and it kind of goes to what Cesar was just talking about, like how much influence or input we have, right? Because essentially what we're approving here is just that we're approving the development plan, and that's essentially from all the work that's been put in. And I know there's been a ton of work that's been put into it, and I recognize that. And overall, I mean, big picture wise, I think this looks great. But I'm just wondering, I guess, how much flexibility or input and voice the council can have. Because certainly I agree with aspects of what Cesar just talked about, the retail versus residential ratio. I think it's an attachment 5, if I'm correct. Wait, was it attachment 6? Sorry, got lost in all these attachments. Hold on. Maybe it was 6.
805.
There's
Yeah.
one. Wait, I think it was 6. Yeah. No, it wasn't that one. Sorry, it was the one that. Oh, it was 4. It was 4 where they on page 4 of attachment 4. I think I'm on the right place. Where it shows the residential to retail. So it really, yeah, so that's where it shows the 13,000, but that's separated between those two buildings, then office being separate. And yeah, I would agree that that seems like a really small amount to, you know, because to me, this much space, and I'm by no means, I trust that folks in the room know what they're doing and that you've obviously put a lot of thought into it. But it would, and I guess maybe it's because it's the first one and then there's gonna be other ones, like at some point, hopefully one of these HTOCs, they're gonna have a grocery store, right? Or they're gonna have like those types of things. So how do we, again, like what's the government's role in this to make sure we get kind of what we need in that space when this is the first one?
How do you strike that balance
Right.
that you're trying to strike?
Right, and I just don't know how much influence we can have, 'cause-
And it's, I would say, again, that it goes back to the problem of we've got 9 properties versus
Right.
one single
Right,
property.
exactly. That's a
In
lot of
addition to
complexity.
that, you do have what we call the transit-related growth area that is north of the Parkway. And that too is, we haven't done the small area plan for that yet, but that's hopefully going to be mixed use as well,
Mhm.
although at lower density, much lower density. And we've been looking at, you know, where might you be able to get a cluster of retail? What you're seeing here develop, if this pattern was to continue along the south side of the Herndon Parkway, what you're seeing is you're seeing the retail on that Herndon Parkway facade. That's where it has the visibility. And of course, when you're retail, that's what you want. You
Yeah.
want the visibility
Yeah.
from the Herndon Parkway. The office and the residential that would be placed in this development alone would not necessarily support
Right.
a lot of types of retail. Now, as we get more people into this area, I think the types of retail demand will shift a bit because you're going to start getting that critical mass. But again, I think that there are two things that are influencing this. I'm hoping the applicant won't disagree with this. One of which is, again, they're the first ones out of the box. I think because of that, there has to be some level of conservative design here when it comes to the amount of retail. I think that's been on their mind because retail is tricky. And if it doesn't have the visibility and it doesn't have the critical mass it needs, then it fails. You have a problem then of empty storefront, and you can see this in some mixed-use apartments where, you know, they've got something there, but it just keeps turning over.
So, Lisa, can we dig in on that piece where, what you just said? Because that's essentially what I'm getting at, is how much flexibility is this? So this development plan states this today, but yeah, the market, by the time they're ready to build, things shifted a little. There's other HTOC development plans in the works, so now they want to dramatically change those ratios. Do they come back to us? Like, what's the process?
As I remember, in the proffers, it
Much
allows
flexibility is
them-
in it.
Proffers have a range, so there's some level of change that would allow them to redo the composition of office, retail, and residential.
Okay.
Mostly change between office and residential, but there is, I forget exactly how much in the retail, but there is fluctuation there. That's right in the proffer. So as long as they stayed within that range, then they could just go through still administratively and do all that.
Okay.
And if they wanted to do 50% retail, which I don't see ever happening, but if they did, that would have to come back because that would be such a change from what's in the proffer.
Okay, that makes sense to me. And then the parking, I guess, so given that there's a parking, the way I read it, and help me with this, make sure I follow this correctly, is that each of the three buildings has a parking garage, and each of the parking garages all will be above ground.
There's portions of.
Portions of it will be above ground, and portions will be.
Portions will be, I would say portions of it will be below ground, the majority of it will be above ground.
Right, so visually, that's, and the renderings look nice, but that concept, that the reality sounds like that's a lot of, and I know you need parking, I get it, but it just, especially so close to the metro, and I'm looking at the parking numbers, which, like the office space needing 650 parking spaces, that's a lot of parking garage.
And the proffers speak to, and the ARBs also discussed how to make that as attractive as possible. And there is language concerning how to screen it, decorate it, so it doesn't just look like a parking garage. If you go to one of the they're using different colored panels, not to totally close off the garage, because that gets into a series of mechanical issues and all this. You have to get different types of air circulation and all, as to cost. But what they are doing is they've broken up the mass. As you can see, they've kind of divided it up into different looks. I mean, that's actually just one big parking garage on those lower levels, but some of it has the colored panels, some of it has green planting along it. Some of it still looks like a typical parking garage. And those are things that in the future, as it goes through the architectural review board, that using the proffers that speak to the fact that this needs to be decorative, the ARB will address that.
And more is not underground because of rock and those issues that you mentioned. Okay, thank you. Bill?
Ms. Baker's last point was gonna be my first point, but that's okay, because the thing I guess I want to bring up too in regards to parking, because it's juxtaposition to the metro, is in regards to the building of it, will there be any, I know growing up in the town, I had a railroad, went to New York City, a lot of people would park on side streets to go to the train station. Is there any, will there be any plan, obviously, to make sure that we don't have, overcrowding in those places because they become popular, next thing you know, it's on a metro website saying, hey, park here, you get free parking and no one checks it
Well,
out.
those office parks across the street and then the adjacent residential is a major concern as well.
Yeah, so I guess that's just the only follow-up I have.
The two side streets and what I'll call the southern street abutting the toll road, those are all private.
Mm-hmm.
And due to the fact that I'm sure the retail that is in here will want turnover, and I'm certain that the residents who are in the space will want turnover, as private streets, they will probably be marked that parking, will only be for so many hours and then towed.
Just some advice from wherever in town.
Other questions or comments? I'm sure there are. Sheila?
Comment, if you haven't noticed, on World Gate Drive, we have above ground parking.
Just there.
So, yeah, there's several buildings over there, so you may want to check those out if you're concerned about that. I know for years I was over there and I didn't realize it, and I was speaking with the developer and I'm like, really? And I went over there and I'm like, whoa. I just would go by and never notice it because they did it so well.
One of those buildings, the lobby is actually on the 4th floor.
Right.
Because the parking is there.
Yeah,
So Dennis and I figured that out one day. We were like, where's the lobby?
Where's the lobby? Yeah. So, yeah, several of the buildings over there, for the same reason, they couldn't go underground to do the parking. Yeah, and I know Reston, some of the businesses I call on for my work, they take care of the parking. So you can't park in the wrong places. They're very well marked, and at some of the buildings, they don't even have Metro that close. It's not at the Wheelie, it's down closer to us, but they seem to do a very good job, as well as the people in Alexandria. You can't park in the wrong place.
Other questions or comments?
One more comment, which is just to thank Bryce for defining his terms before he uses the acronyms. That means a lot to me.
That is helpful, thank you. So I have a very strong sense that this council is excited about the metro development, that we've been working on it for a really long time. The 17, that it's Development Plan 17-01 means it started in 2017, so a ton of work has happened before it gets here. And I don't want the developers to freak out, but we don't have to approve this next week. I think that we very well may. I feel good about it, but this is a lot, and this is the first huge development that's come into Herndon. There's never been anything like this. So I think that if there is a sense that we need to take, not months, but maybe a second meeting to really dive in and make sure we understand, because we're going to get a lot of questions on this, and I think that we all want to be able to be sure that we can answer those questions and tell why this development is what is going to work for Herndon. So it's nice to have a very pro-Metro council. I appreciate that, so I'm not worried that it's not going to pass at some point. I hesitate to predict what councils will ever do, but I feel good about it passing, but I just want to make sure that we are taking the right amount of time and digging in and making sure we understand what it is we're approving. So I'm excited to finally have it here. My only design comment is the only thing I hear from anyone ever is, please don't make it look like that green and blue building over in Reston. So I apologize if that is your development, but people don't really love that. So that's just going to throw that. The XO building over by
Yes.
by Oracle.
And it's my
changes
favorite color, but
It's Lila's
it
favorite
doesn't
color
work
too.
for that
But
building.
anyway, it's a very, very big blue building. So I like the breakup kind of idea. Maybe there's a place for something like that. But anyway, that's my bold statement. But we are very excited. So I hope that my comments about really digging in don't make you nervous, because I do feel strongly that we're finally here. This has been 8 years in the making. Sheila and I didn't have to color our hair when we started this. So appreciate all the work. I know the Planning Commission dug in really deep on this as well. And if council has questions or comments or things that come up, please send them to the manager. because we want to make sure that we've got it out there. I anticipate having some real input from the public next week. And it's, yeah,
I did like the input from a member of our public about bird friendly. That was a very,
yes.
very nice addition.
All right, so any other comments or questions before we move on? Pretty.
The conceptual design looks very good. I hope the real design looks just as good as this one. So,
All right, anything else? All right, thank you all. I think there are more representatives for this project than there are council members here this evening, so thank you all for all your work. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next week. While everybody's shuffling out, I need to let you guys know something. I'm actually about to have to leave. My family got some distressing information this afternoon late about a family that my son has been friends with for many years. I don't want to get into it on the record in specifics. I'm happy to share with you, but I need to go home because my husband is on the train from New York, and I need to break some news to my son. So, thank you. I apologize. I'm grateful to have the vice mayor that leave this in your good hands. So thank you all.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. If I get in trouble, I've got Bill. You've got so many people named Bill. Okay, now I can get my office back up. Okay, that brings us to number 8. Tammy.
Yes, ma'am.
Yay. New dates.
Oh, maybe. So this is the ordinance to amend chapter 63 regarding definitions, general requirements, responsibilities of owners, residential collection time and replacement, schedule of fees for recyclable special collections violations. I was going to take a moment in the very beginning of this to kind of give you an update. As you know, we're moving forward with the route changes. Just to give you a brief little picture of our changes, this is going to be the new Monday, Tuesday recycling areas. The Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday trash, is that trash areas. And just so you know, all the blue outlined is all the new automated areas. The only changes are, we are adding new areas for recycling in the red. So all of these residences will be getting new, some automated recycling containers.
Do they have automated trash today?
Yes.
Okay,
So
just
now
not
they'll
for
have
recycling.
both.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
got it.
won't have the split anymore.
Because you did the one day and got it.
Yeah.
Limitations of the trucks.
Yes. All right, sorry. And as I mentioned, the route changes are going to take effect on Monday, August the 5th. We have done quite a bit of outreach so far. The calendars now show when August 5th, the changes to recycling on Monday, Tuesday, trash on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We did send letters out, which everyone seems to have gotten. We also sent letters to the HOAs to provide us with an option for the carts because some of the areas would have a little bit of a trouble putting the 96-gallon carts in. So we have all that ready to go. We'll be ready to order that in the coming weeks so we can get those delivered to the residents. We do have a dedicated website, the My Trash Days. We will have a searchable map. Right now we only have the maps that I showed you. But we're working with IT to put together one where you can put in your address and it'll pop up what your new days will be. And we'll also have a brochure we've been working with Ann on to not only talk about the program, but also what is and is not recyclable. For the ordinance, just kind of wanted to give you a brief overview of the history of this ordinance, mostly associated with the recycling and recycling fee. The recycling center was opened in 1990, There was a solid waste management plan after that, and then the quarterly fee that we have now was introduced and approved at $7.50 per quarter. After that, the next year, it was lowered to $2.50. Not, wow. Yeah. I don't have much more on that. This is the history as I could give it. The 2002 special collection violation fees were approved. As you can see, the special collection was proposed at $50, approved at $25, violation proposed at $50 and approved at $50. In 2009, the special collection fee was increased to $35. And that is the one where you call in and we'll come pick it up, and it goes up to, that's for 3 cubic yards. And then in 2010, not only did the recycling center close, but the quarterly fee was increased from $2.50 to $4. Best I can find is to change, the changes to cover costs related to recycling, which include public outreach and education. So in working on this chapter 63, I was trying to find some history on how the recycling fee started, why there were changes made, to give a good reason to move forward. This is an overview of what our ordinance changes are. One of the big ones is the containers. We are proposing to change the time to have them set out to 6 a.m. instead of 7 a.m., which will bring us in line with some of the other municipalities. Plus, it'll allow us to create those efficiencies. In the summer, we do start earlier, and currently we have to go back around because we can't get the word out the day before when we make the decision to come in earlier, and that's due to the heat index. So we don't want our guys out there late whenever the heat index is over a certain degree. So.
And by the way, our noise ordinance also allows for early trash pickup
Yes.
at 6 a.m. So the private vendors can also do the same thing.
Yes.
Okay, give your guys a break.
Just not on my
Ours is pretty quick.
There's a,
If you need to sleep.
it's already early.
We are proposing to have the containers out no more than 12 hours before pickup, and have them removed by 6 a.m. the next day. And this is because there are times where there could be quite a few containers out there at one time, and it can get quite crowded in some of these areas. So this is to kind of make it a little more, clean it up for our guys coming in there, and hopefully make it a little more efficient. We added some clarification on our collection containers, what a collection container is, specifically called out the automated carts, which are different. They have a little more rugged, have a specific, they can be picked up by our automated arms. We added in a few more definitions about what a material recovery facility is, which is where we take our recycling, also called a MRF. They do set the requirements on what they can and cannot take and what we can take to them. We also put in, added in more, just more clarification on that, the cart needs to have a closed lid. We did some minor things. We added in that the commercial establishments should refer to the town's streetscape manual for any guidance on their style, the number and placement of the containers. We also added in, it wasn't in there before, but this is kind of what we go with for the weights of these special collection items. Mostly for the safety of our guys. We don't want things over 50 pounds for some of the smaller items and over 100 pounds for some of the other items. So we just clarified that a little bit more. We removed rental containers, which haven't been used, at least definitely since I've been here, probably a while. We do still do it for the internal, like when John D. or Parks and Recs do events. We have those. We have some of those containers, but we don't have any to rent out to private.
What are those?
Just like a 4-yard, 8-yard containers that you can just go toss your trash in for whatever event you might be having. Not like your normal 96 gallon, but a large roll-off container, so, yeah.
Like at restaurants.
Yep,
St.
probably didn't even know that
Patrick's
was
Day.
available.
And now we're not gonna have it available, so.
Nope, we just, yeah, aren't able to do that anymore. And also, last but not least, an increase to the recycling and special collection of violation fees, which, as you can see, have not been changed. They've been changed a little bit, but this, definitely not since 2010. So this is just to show you our proposed increases to the recycling fee. As many of you probably already know, that this is billed quarterly through your water bill. That's where people would see the $4 per quarter. We're proposing to increase to $8 per quarter and look at this at least every 2 years, definitely in the next year or two, and I'll get to the reasoning why. We're also proposing an increase to the special collection fee from $35 to $60, which would better is a better rate for what it actually costs to go pick that up. And the violation fee, it didn't really make sense that it was the same. I mean, you're violating our code, so we propose to basically use the violation fee as double what our special collection is. And then in instances where the town actually has to pick it up, it would be the same as the special collection fee. So not every time do we pick up when there's illegal dumping.
Oh, we don't, okay. So, so to clarify, the violation means people putting out trash that that we're not gonna collect? Or that they haven't asked for a special collection, or that they leave it out for hours and hours and days?
Any of the above.
Okay.
Any of the above. If you have an
Yeah.
old mattress and you just throw it on your curbside, right?
Mhm.
And then we
So
have to go
before
in.
it
Yeah, if we
costs
can
the
find out who
same-
it is, or sometimes we'll actually go to the HOA.
But,
if it's
but
in a common
before,
area.
it cost the same as if we called the town and said, can you please pick it up?
Yeah,
Yes.
before it would be the
So
same.
the
Yep.
goal is to create a certain disincentive for people to just throw stuff.
Yeah, keeping it the same was an incentive. I'll throw it out there and maybe you won't catch me. And if you do, I'll pay the same number, so. we
There's
wanted
been
to change that.
a ginormous TV on Barton Oaks Place for the past month and a half, maybe longer. I don't,
Yeah.
it's,
Unfortunately, we don't take electronics or TVs, but yeah, we can at least get to the HOAs if
And
they
the
have
other-
one.
The other question is the recycling costs. I mean, has the cost of disposing of recycling increased?
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna get to
Yes.
that.
Yeah, she's
Mhm.
gonna get to that here in a second.
Yep.
Because even the $8 doesn't even, it's not about
Still
40%
subsidizes it.
of
Yeah.
recycling fee.
So to go into what Signe was bringing up, the recycling is I call it, it's a market, it's a commodity. It's a commodity rate is what we get back for our recycling. So it's very much like any other, on the NASDAQ, it's got its own rate. And they change monthly. Our material, basically, just to go into a little detail, our recycling facility, the MRF that we use, we go take a load of our recycling down there, they sort it out by a ratio, and then they use that to bill us monthly. So currently, as you can see, 66% of our loads have a rebate of $0 to $5 per ton. And actually, the mixed paper for February just came back at $0. So we're not gonna get anything for that. And as you can see, mixed paper at its highest in 2017 was $95 per ton. And cardboard is about 20% of our loads, and that's $70 per ton, actually $60 in February. And at its highest, it was at $180. And March 2017 is kind of a good indicator. In February of 2017 is when China really came down on their regulations for what they were accepting. So you're kind of seeing what's happening to that commodity now that they have regulations in place. They're no longer taking the contaminated loads that they were or bales. So we're kind of seeing that now. I do have some, not sure what chart I actually have in there. Yeah, I do have a chart that shows what our rebates are. The recycling fee, as part of the history, I was looking at its purpose. It seemed to originally start off as to offset the rising cost of refuse and recycling when we first started it. It used to be a dual stream. Everybody separated out their own recycling, and then we moved to the single stream. And in 2010, it was used to, the rate was increased to further cover some of the costs to recycling. And now, currently, our fees at $4 per quarter cover about 20% of our actual recycling costs. 1 day a week, 52 weeks a year. The question is, what should it cover? Currently, the proposed fee that we're putting in place would cover about 40% of the cost and help with recovery of the rebates that we're no longer receiving. But looking at it in another year or two would also help us see what the market's doing, see what other jurisdictions are doing, municipalities, because in reality, some places are stopping curbside collection. They're going to the residents sorting it themselves at recycling stations, increasing fees like we are to try and cover some of these costs to see what's happening. And here you can see our current revenue is about $98,000 a year off that $4 per quarter. Granted, the $4 per quarter is only to those receiving service from the town and the multifamily units. There's 3, right? There's that we also bill. So you're looking at about 6,100 households that are billed for $4 per quarter. Our current recycling costs are, as you can see, for about $480,000 a year. Most of that is the manpower, the equipment, operation and maintenance of the largest vehicles in our fleet, and the most complex, really. We're at the proposed $8 a quarter. Our revenue would be about $196,000 per year, so about 40% of the actual cost of recycling. This is the tonnage versus our rebate. The line is our
Sales graph.
It doesn't look very good. Yeah, so as you can see, obviously the rebates have gone down. The amount that we're recycling has not gone down. I mean, and we're not going to stop recycling. Recycling is still a good thing. It's just not it's not paying for itself like I think that it was intended to in the beginning. So, I think I have one more. Just to show you what other municipalities are doing. We are one of a handful that have a recycling fee. The large majority of municipalities have a solid waste fee that covers most of their fund needs. Some just do it through taxes. Most of the smaller municipalities are the ones that I see that do that. One thing to note, Alexandria and Fairfax County are both proposing increases to their solid waste fees this coming year. I did find a few municipalities that have a recycling fee, but the funny thing about recycling and trash collection is everybody kind of does their own thing. You got contracted, there's people that have enterprise funds, there's people that have the solid waste fee, there's recycling fee, but the few, I will say, regarding any fee, recycling fee, we are the lowest in the state, at $16 a year, which is, and it's hard to relate, so that's why I didn't put it up here really, but because there are so many differences, it's hard to relate. It's like a bowl of fruit, really. everybody does their own thing. And everybody has a different tipping fee, so.
Well, thank you.
So basically, yes, that's, that's the end of my presentation, but I was gonna see if you had any questions.
Yep, anybody got questions?
Yeah.
Do we pay, we don't pay solid waste fee, we just pay recycling in Herndon?
We have a recycling fee for the citizens, yeah.
But not solid waste?
The citizens
No.
don't pay a solid waste.
No, that's all.
Cesar?
Yeah, thank you, that was a
Sure.
So, real quick, just want to verify, not every home is hit with that.
No,
fee. Okay.
only the ones that we provide service for.
Okay.
Yeah, either our crews or we do have a multifamily contract.
I
Yep.
thought I heard that, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
When you're using 2010, is that fiscal year or calendar year for the rates?
That was,
That would
That would've
probably
been-
be
it would've
calendar
started-
year because it would have been an ordinance change.
yeah, it went with the budget that
Yeah,
year,
so-
so.
The reason I'm asking is I just want to process this.
Yep,
So in 10 years, that rate has not gone up.
no,
Why is that?
honestly don't know.
Okay, let me ask the council
Been here 2
members,
years.
I've been
why
here
hasn't
2
that
years,
rate
yeah.
gone up?
I
That-
think-
That to me seems a little bit out of line with what, I mean, you have rising costs of
Yeah.
people, maintenance on things. So if you had to wave your magic wand, instead of that $8, where would you be?
Well, to cover the true cost of recycling would be.
$20 would offset
$20
the
a
price.
The reason I'm asking is because
$20
it's,
per quarter would offset.
It's,
when you rip off that Band-Aid,
mhm,
when you increase revenues to cover those things,
yeah.
it's easier to do that once.
Mhm.
So if, in your opinion, you're gonna need more, I would say, let us know. You know, get what you
Yeah.
need at this point, because I think
Yeah.
we're behind the curve here, quite
We are,
frankly.
yeah.
So I would suggest to my fellow council members that this is kind of just one poll here. And I think we need to address this with a little bit of.
If I can answer your question about the 2010, I would say that one of the things is you've had a leadership change at the management team level, a significant leadership change. And we were looking at first, it was the water and sewer rates that we were really in a bad shape over. And we took a look at that. Now we're starting to spread out into what else have we touched in a long time? And is it time to reevaluate? And I think, again, it's Tammy's leadership in identifying this and saying, hey, we're not anywhere coming close to recouping these costs, bring it to my attention, and then we bring it to
Well,
yours.
thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the water sewer was a year ago.
Yeah, we
Right.
did a whole study and created a plan around it, and then did water and sewer about a year ago, at this time.
Right. Anyone else, questions?
Yeah.
Nice.
I got a couple because I had a couple of people
Cheryl,
ask.
sorry, I
me.
had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
That's okay. So I know we sent out, like, I think I got one letter to my house, but have we
Yeah.
socialized the rate changes? Because sometimes I forget what I've seen as a council person and what the citizens have seen.
Oh, this.
So, I mean, I know we sent out like maps and we've started to talk about
Yeah.
that, and I've seen that, but did we,
This was advertised,
it's just advertised
Just
as this, but we
advertised.
haven't like socialized this because obviously we don't know what it's gonna be.
This needs an
Send out a
ordinance
letter like
change,
this
unlike the
week.
other fees where we can just plug and play a little
Right,
bit.
but
this
even the
one,
fact that
yeah.
we're raising fees, whatever, we don't notify any of that until we actually do it.
Right.
Okay. And then do we feel like, I mean, I hear what Cesar is saying, and it's logical that we should be recouping, I think, more than 40%. But I think there is a concern that, to essentially double your fees,
Mhm.
even if folks feel like, I know we're still not even recouping it, we're still doubling our fees, so probably that feels like the right number to start with, and if we review it again.
I think that the process will be every 2 years, we'll look at going forward around budget time and come back and revisit it. One of the things that we're really sensitive to is the commodity prices of the recycling. At one point, we were getting a lot of money back. So we were getting the fee and then we were dumping and getting a lot of money back on the rebates. Now we're not seeing anything off the rebates. And so this is
Right.
pure cost. And so that really highlighted it and put it to the fore as to why we need to have this conversation. But we do want to review this. As a matter of fact, it's part of a longer comprehensive thing that John and I have talked about, where annually we need to go through and look at our fees, look at our fee schedules on the myriad of fees or fees
Yeah.
across the board, and are we doing the right things? Are these things set up to do what they're intended to do? And I think this one doesn't need to be annually, but no worse than every other year, we've got to come back and do this.
And citizens don't, I mean, it's not like they can call up and say, hey, I don't want to pay that fee, I don't have recycling. It's not like we give them the opt-out.
Jenny would get very angry.
Right. Because I am concerned if we do increase it dramatically, that folks are like, I don't recycle anyway, like I don't want to pay. Because I think if refuse, I feel like, I think that's a potential concern, so. And then trash, so is recycling still costing the town more than trash collection? Sorry, you
No.
already said, but yeah.
No, I mean, this is just the cost for the one day. The recycling is still not as expensive as trash, because we don't get a rebate on the trash, so,
So I'm not looking to be radical because I think this, like, let's just go with what you're proposing here. But I guess my question is, looking at what the other jurisdictions are doing, since
Mhm.
everyone else is essentially, you charge for trash, not recycling, and that
Well,
is what costs
they
more.
their charge is solid waste, which
Oh, so they kind of just do a combined fee?
Yeah, it's just called solid waste fee.
And if I can just throw one other thing out that changes, when Tammy at the outset of this presentation talked about the new route changes.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be able to put we have 2 recycling days. We're gonna automate more recycling routes. So hopefully we can get some cost savings off those recycling routes and hopefully help the other side of the ledger as well in this. And then we'll come back in 2 years, reevaluate it.
Yeah, no, I get that
Yeah,
part,
once everything's stabilized
but I'm
out.
just saying, the fact that we're charging for, what it lists to the citizens is that we're charging for recycling as opposed to trash,
Right.
where it seems like most of the other jurisdictions are charging for general refuse or,
Yeah.
and whether there's thought that we should be more in line with what's typical, or I don't know that there's some unique reason why, it doesn't sound like there was a reason why we.
Yeah, I think it was just whenever
That's
whenever
what we
it
did,
first started,
yeah.
it was a recycling fee, and it was because we were one of the first towns that did start the recycling routes, and so they started it as a recycling fee to pay for the bins, to pay for
Yeah.
the center where they used to sort it.
It might just be out of date, right?
It could be
It could be.
very well.
That essentially and maybe it's not this time, because I think we're implementing a lot of changes, right, between the routes and everything else and the fees.
Yeah.
But maybe when we look at this again, whether it's a year from now, 2 years from now, whether it should just be a more blanket
Solid
refuse
waste.
and trashing and recycling
It's a thought,
fee.
yeah, I mean, definitely something to think about, because in reality, we're about one of 5 or 6 that have a recycling fee in the state.
But we don't charge anything for trash, and lots of jurisdictions do,
Yes.
right? So I think
We don't
that's
charge
what I'm getting at.
an extra supplement that they pay
Exactly.
for
A fee.
in their taxes.
A fee,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what I'm getting at, that there's potential to charge that fee. Okay, that's what I wanted,
And like
thank you.
snow removal, we don't put a charge on there for that.
Right, like you don't wanna charge for everything, but yeah, I know, so we gotta think about that.
Anyone else have a question?
What does GF stand for?
Sure.
General fund, sorry.
Thank
General
you.
fund.
So my one question, I had someone send me an email and they
Uh-huh.
wanted to know, can they get a new recycle bin? And I know you're phasing those out, but I wanted to verify.
Oh, you're talking
it.
about the ball.
The regular
The
bin.
small ones.
No. We
So
don't
can they
have
get a
those.
big recycling can if they're not on the route? Okay. I just needed to know.
Yep.
I still have mine and I keep putting duct tape on it. That was their concern, was duct tape, so I have different kinds of duct tape, so I could probably ask them over to pick out their color. And I have been using your brochure. I ran across it the other day and reposted it on Facebook to remind people.
Okay.
Right after I got your letter reminding
Mhm.
us that the new routes are gonna change in August, so I thought
That was
I would take
timely.
on, yeah.
Sheila, are you aware that Reston Now hijacked your Facebook post and actually posted, courtesy of Sheila Olam's Facebook page, that picture you took of the
Oh,
of the
cool.
letter? It was in Reston Now.
Okay, I didn't know that. I took a very nice picture of what you do, what you should and shouldn't put in the trash and shouldn't put in the recycle.
Yeah.
Visual.
And if you don't know, if you go to a Nature Fest every year, DPW usually shows up and lets you play the recycle game. So that's where I learned, don't put the pizza box in the recycle. Okay. moving right along. Number 9, Dave. Zoning administrator is going to talk about a special exception.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm gonna quickly go through. So special exception 19-03, which is a request for a fitness facility at 281 Sunset Park Drive. So, Sunset Business Park, that's, where this business is located, that's planned development business. So as one of our planned development districts, it is regulated by proffers. So those proffers were originally approved back in April of 1982. And they had some minor amendments to those in '89 to allow theaters as permitted use. And the other by right uses in that zoning district are wholesaling, warehousing, some limited types of retail, and restaurants. However, any type of fitness or recreational facility is required to obtain a special exception. So again, as I mentioned, Sunset Business Park is planned development business. With this area over here where the new hotel is proposed is also planned development business, but that is under a different set of proffered conditions specific to the hotel development. And then everything else around the site is office and light industrial zoning. So it is located in the front of, this is really kind of the rearmost building at the site, but it's located in the front, kind of between those two buildings. And so this space, it's the former location of Saigon Pho, and that was a Vietnamese restaurant. And so the applicant has operated the previous Coco Fit Club and the Fox Mill Shopping Center in Reston. And their business model focuses on individualized training. So sometimes that's with a physical trainer, and sometimes it's with a digital physical trainer. And so members are provided with a key fob, and they have access to the gym 24/7. And kind of the key takeaway of their business operations is they don't do any class-based activities. It's really all focused on one type training. And it's really designed to be most flexible for any time of day, again, not having certain times of day. So kind of comparing this parking-wise to the previous use, which again was the restaurant, which was a by right use, based on the size of the tenant space, and this is about 1,400 square feet, that would have required about 6 or 7 parking spaces would have been the minimum required by the zoning ordinance. So staff is putting a condition on the total number of clients between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. You only have a maximum of 6 clients at any one time during those hours. And for a little bit of background, this Sunset Business Park has had some problems just in general with parking. And it makes it a little bit difficult when you have a mixture again of by right uses and special exception uses. But again, limiting it to 6 during those peak hours of when the parking is being used is consistent with what the previous by right use was. And it's also falls kind of right in the middle of what's been used as a condition on the previous fitness facilities that have gone into this location, Sunset. So staff is recommending approval of this application with the attached conditions. Planning Commission also recommended approval at their February 25th meeting. Do you have any questions?
Yes. Anyone got questions? Sydney?
So there's a Diva Fit over there, and they
Yes.
do classes. Are you saying that they also have to go to that limit of 6?
No, it varies. The Diva Fit, they're limited. They are at the higher end. They're limited to 8 between 8 AM and 6 PM. And then 16 is the upper limit at any other times.
And is that also true of like I think there's a dance place there?
Yeah, most of the ones, some of them have
Rhythm Street.
a strange condition. The dance one is probably the strangest one because they have a condition, it doesn't limit the number of people, but I think a lot of it are students, so they have to be brought in by shuttle bus.
Yeah, I see a lot of drop-offs.
Yeah, so that's kind of how theirs worked. And so that's kind of the point of special exceptions, so you can cater the conditions to each business. So again, in this one, it makes sense to limit the number of clients during the hours. In that one, if you can have more people in the building, but they're just gonna be dropped off, so that's how that one was limited.
Pretty?
No, I'm good. I
Okay.
was gonna ask what type of gym, but I saw the application
Okay.
and I saw what exactly it is, so I'm good.
Anyone else? Have you gotten any feedback from the other businesses in the area?
No, we haven't, and because these are condo ownership,
Right.
it's not just the adjacent parcels.
Right.
It has to be all of the spaces because again, it's not all under a single ownership. But between, so I think it 30 or 35 notices went out. Staff hasn't received anything. The condo association manager hasn't mentioned anything, so.
That's good because they're pretty active over there. They pay attention to who's coming in. Okay, no more questions? Oh,
Is
go ahead.
is the business okay with just 6 clients at a time?
Yes, they're fine with all the conditions. And again, so anytime outside of that, it could increase more. But they've also provided us records and they never really have any more than 6 people at a time anyway, so it just kind of fits in with what they do.
Thank you.
Okay, so, you have our general. No? I was wondering why they had you doing the general. Thought maybe Cindy, I thought maybe you had laryngitis or something. Okay, Cindy's gonna talk to us about the rate
articulately
changes.
about it.
Thanks.
Thank you. I also want to talk about fees. Parks and Recreation Department admission fees and our pass fees are council improvements. So are a few of our others, particularly facility fees. So I have a couple of those to talk about tonight as well. Our admission fee structure has been tied to Fairfax County Park Authority fee structure since 2006 when we finished phase 4. For consistency, to kind of keep us in the range but below them, to have kind of an easy means of determining when our fees were going to increase based on when theirs were going to increase, and we were very consistent about that. Both organizations have not done comprehensive fee changes since 2011, primarily because the fees were at a good place in comparison to the other private facilities around us. We didn't want to be at the top, we didn't want to be at the bottom, we've been pretty fairly balanced throughout that time. We have done several nominal changes to senior rates, to some of the other various passes since then, but not a comprehensive change since then. What we are proposing as part of our look at how we want to do our revenue recovery from this point forward is to untie us from the Fairfax County Park Authority structure, primarily because their proposed fees right now are going to go so high that we feel like that's not beneficial to our users. They're currently at $10 for residents and $12.50 for non-residents for a daily walk-in, come use the facility. And even with our discounted structure, we just feel like that's too high for our community. The difference for them is they have very few non-resident users. There's only a couple places in the county where somebody outside of Fairfax would come and use their facility, whereas we're a little bit different. typically 65-35% resident or non-resident resident use, so ours is different. So we don't want to impact our non-resident users that dramatically. So we're proposing, as you have in front of you, to set up kind of our own process by starting with a 50-cent increase to the single adult daily admission for resident and non-resident, and then doing a discount based off of that across the rest of our fees. So for our youth, for our seniors, and then for our various passes. And it is really just based on, for example, a 30-day pass. If you do 8 visits or more, then it's advantageous to buy the pass rather than pay the daily fee. And we just worked it out across the board based on that. We didn't make any changes to the types of passes we offer, the 10 visit, 25, 30-day, 6-month annual pass. There's no changes to that. No changes to the categories within that, our youth, our student one, our adult 2-person married, adult senior, non-senior pairs, all of those things are the same. So no significant changes to any of the other structure. Really, that's the extent of the change. It's significant, but not that complicated, I guess, in terms of the impact to the fees. The only other piece that's a change in what we're proposing in this policy is to our room rental fees, and those have been adjusted a number of times over the last several years, probably not since 15 have we adjusted the hourly rates. But we're proposing to increase with the half gym, the full gym, the community room 1, which is the bigger room that we primarily use for our larger rentals, and then our small room, our arts and crafts room, which is frequently used, most often used for birthday parties and things like that. So increasing from $115 to $130 for the half gym, from $225 to $250 for the full gym, $125 to $150 for community room 1, and $40 to $60 for the arts and crafts room. The full gym rate is very comparable to what some of the other community centers, even though we're all very different in terms of how we're set up. For example, the city of Fairfax is a much different type of facility than Herndon's is. Herndon's is similar to Ida Lee's and Leesburg, but still different. So they're not direct comparables, but they're similar. So just to give you a general idea of that. And that's the extent of what we're suggesting. These would be implemented starting in September because we already have our summer information or ready to go to publication. So these would go into effect in the fall.
Okay. Is that all?
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone have questions? Pretty?
Thank you for the information. My question is, so visit pass means if I get 25 visit pass means every visit I have, whether I do in 7 days in a row or I do like once every week, just one pass will be taken out of 25, right?
Correct.
And then 30 days means it's a 30 regular days.
It's a defined period.
Okay,
Correct.
okay. Because I see a big jump from 100, reduce the price on 25 visit pass is $140 and for one adult town of Herndon resident, and for 30 days is $56. So that's because we're counting the days, and there we are counting the entry, right?
Correct. Right. And you can use, for example, we suggested people who are doing a birthday party and want to do a swim, buy a 25 visit pass, punch it 12 times for the 12 kids who are there.
Oh,
and,
okay.
So that sort of thing. So people will use it for that purpose as well as it doesn't really, it expires, but it's a long term that you can use that pass.
Sydney?
I know in the past you've discussed that we have scholarships, I guess.
Correct.
For some kids. Is there going to be any impact on that with this?
So
How do we fund that?
currently our scholarship policy and our fee waiver policy does not apply to admissions. It only applies to classes and program fees.
Is there?
We may come to you fairly soon with a proposal to include admissions, but it never has in the past.
The reason I ask is that when I was knocking doors this summer, a number of people mentioned that they thought the fees were too expensive for vulnerable youth, I guess I would say. And that is our, I would say, our primary target audience. And they were just talking about entry fees, as far as I could tell. But I'm wondering if we could expand that and maybe target some fundraising or something like that. Do we have a foundation we could use?
We don't have a foundation. I would not necessarily say that youth is our primary target for just general admission, because we have open gym time for kids, specific for kids, but they have to be a certain age to go use the fitness room, they have to be a certain age to go use the pool or be accompanied by an adult. So not that they're not a target, but it's not necessarily our primary. However, we are certainly open to a further reduction in the youth rate if that's something that the council is interested in. Or, like I said, we are interested, staff is very interested in adding admissions to the scholarship and fee waiver programs. We have some processing issues on the management of that we need to work out before we can bring that policy to you guys and say, hey, this is what we want to do. But we're looking at that right now.
Any other questions? Cesar?
Yeah, thank you for the information. Did I hear that the rates or fees were static since 2011?
The broad, every fee has not been changed or adjusted since 2011. We have done select ones in, I think in 12 and in 14, made some changes.
Again, maybe I'm missing the theme here, but what is it that you're trying to provide or can't provide with that constraint in terms of that budget that you're working with? Is there something that we're not providing that might be of greater value? I'm asking you to think outside that constraint box.
You mean the constraint of the structure of the fee policy? I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
I mean, 50 cents after 10 years.
Well, I would say that we are not the least expensive fitness facility in the community. And we don't want to go too much higher in terms of all of our pass rates. We don't have the same amenities that a WorldGate would have. We're different from Cocoa Fit Club because they're a one-on-one kind of thing. And women. One of our advantages is we have the pool. Not all the fitness centers have the pool, but they might provide towel service. They might provide childcare included in the cost. They might provide their wellness yoga classes and things like that in the cost, which we do not. We charge separately for that. So when we look at all of the other commercial gyms, in addition to the recreation center facilities, we're trying to stay below the top right now. So I think staff is comfortable at that level and wouldn't want to jump a whole lot more than that. And we have heard every time we do a survey, we hear you're expensive.
But people are using the facility.
People are still used, absolutely.
It's bad. I mean, it's a really successful.
Well, and again, I'm not going to get into here, but I mean, you know what your capacity is and when the peaks are. And I think after 10 years, a 50-cent increase is, you're missing something there, possibly. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, I think that's why we've stayed where we were, because really the rest of the market wasn't jumping up either.
Okay.
Okay, Jen?
Yeah, there's a few places where the rates are actually going down, I think only for non-residents, not for residents. So was that just, is there now, I feel like, maybe it was in 2014, because that's the only option. We talked about kind of having it more proportional, because I think there was kind of a little bit of a bunch of anomalies and a wacky pattern
There
to
was
it.
the 25 visit pass was really wacky. That was one I
Right.
know that we changed in 14.
Right.
And fixed. And I think there's been some changes to some of the senior rates. It really just happened just because of trying to
Trying to make
balance
it more
and be
proportional.
consistent.
Yeah, that's what I
across all the
figured.
way across.
Okay. All right. And I know, given that non-residents, like you said, is 35%, that's interesting, they're gonna get a discount. I kinda hate that they're gonna get a discount, but, we do wanna keep them coming, and I appreciate that we wanna keep the proportion, consistent, so that seems fair.
I just
Yeah,
have
yeah.
one question. What's the difference between a youth and a dependent youth?
The dependent youth pass means that the parents in the family have a pass,
Okay.
and this is one of their children,
Got it, okay, just for.
as opposed to just a kid who has their.
Do they have to go with their parent?
They don't have to come with their parent,
They
but
just
they
get a
purchase it
pass.
as.
Got it.
Yeah.
Anything else?
You know what, can I add to that then?
Yes, Jen.
You know what might make more sense then for those, just, take this if you want or not, but, because at the end, when you do adult, two-person, senior, two-person, whatever, dependent youth, maybe it's adult plus youth, and then you would have that rate, because then that would clear up that question, because essentially that's what you're saying, you only get that youth pass if you also have the adult pass?
Correct.
So maybe could we just write it that way, since the other ones, the youth, the 25 visit, just a youth or a student could buy that outright, but the only way you get the 30-day, that dependent youth is if you already, so maybe we just team it up like you have the rest of them?
Gotcha.
Just to suggest, just a thought, it's, because I do think that, I had this, I didn't ask that, but I did not follow what dependent youth meant either.
Gotcha.
So if I have 3 children, do I need to buy 3 dependent cards?
Each child would have their own pass.
Right, so,
Oh, so maybe that's the
So
difference.
it's an
There you
add-on.
go, because that way,
only because I sell insurance and we do
you're
that.
totally right, you're totally right.
Kinda
So
got
that's
it.
where it
To
is a
look at how it's
limitation.
written.
That,
How we put it in the
that the
brochure.
other two persons, that's kind of a
Right.
logical two-person, but the youth could be +3.
Yes.
Okay, very good, that's why it's that way, now we know. Thank you.
Do you have a daycare as well?
We do have childcare that we provide for people while they're in the building. It's not available the full length of our operating hours, it's very specific times.
Specific times, and do we charge for that?
Right now, it's
Service?
included.
Oh, with
If
this,
you were,
okay.
yeah.
For certain times.
Certain times,
Yeah.
okay.
Fantastic.
So is it more like when the parents are working out, we
Yeah,
wanna
they
take
need to
care of the
be in
kids,
the
or
building, taking
it's
the
like,
class or working.
if we are open for childcare for like 4 hours, then somebody can come and drop their kids and go
For a maximum of 2 hours.
2 hours, okay.
And they need to be in the building.
Okay. Remember, 2 kids' dad is asking this question.
We gotta get you
Just drop
there.
them off and leave.
We don't keep them all day, we don't do that.
And I'd highly advise not messing with the childcare because I've never seen an angrier group of people than when it came up in budget a few years back.
Yeah.
And the mother stormed the council chambers, not very happy.
I was in the audience, it was raucous, it was
Yes.
scary.
Yes.
Don't mess with moms, man.
Those kids have since grown up and moved on, but they're still,
Oh, there's
mom still
another
comes to
slew,
the building.
another drove behind
Yep.
them.
Yep.
Yeah, the childcare for parents is awesome because I had mine, were little, shouldn't have gone and worked out. So, thank you. Okay, does anyone, we're to the consent agenda, does anyone have any questions or comments?
On that,
Seems good. This is about the grant,
yeah, just getting more money.
okay? Nobody's got any issues with that? So now, I think it's Mr. Town Manager time.
That's my time. Yes, thank you very much, Madam
Your
Vice
time.
Mayor, I appreciate it. Just to recap what we left the conversation on, I just wanted to go back over a few things and then get your advice and input as to how to move forward. What I presented to you 2 weeks ago was a series of spreadsheets with the numbers that create a balanced budget that incorporate what I believe is the biggest threat we had to our budget and our revenue profiles, which was a loss of capital funding stream of close to $1 million. So in these series of spreadsheets, I do propose a 1 cent increase in the meals tax to cover the capital shortfalls so that we can continue an aggressive capital improvement program moving forward. So that is baked in. This is a budget that went through the budget team. We took a myriad of priorities that came from the various departments, and we asked for justifications on various things. We asked for the priorities, and we try to mash the priorities of the entire town government together and come up with a series of numbers. And from my perspective, I'm perfectly comfortable going into next year with this budget in hand, because I think it meets a lot of what you asked for in your budget resolution. That said, as we have every year, we have a list of things that didn't make it through the budget process, either because it was lower priorities to a department, because the need was not necessarily defined, or it was just we could not afford the question for this year. We were going to try to supplement it some other way, if possible. And I gave that sheet to you as a list of unfunded priorities that you may want to consider to include. That includes everything from the new positions at the top to some capital improvements in the middle, down to operations and maintenance issues that didn't make it through, to include the community grants above the static number where we kept the rest of the government. So the additional $60,000 in grant requests versus what the baseline number was last year. It included everything you see here. And then, as you know, as you're making your selections, these are choices. When you do something on the expenditure side, there's got to be a corresponding revenue impact. And so I gave you some rates at the bottom of our more stable tax revenue streams. And so as we look at these things, if there are things you're interested in here, then we need to look at, do we need to do more than a penny on the meals tax? Do we need some other sort of increased tax combination to make that happen? With that said, I just also want to say with this list here, this list happens every year. So next year, we're going to get another list like this. And sometimes some of the things that don't make it through, make it into next year's list or make it into next year's budget. Sometimes things on this list disappear and don't ever come up again. So it truly is a mixed bag that you always see a budget reduction list and unfunded priority list every budget season. Those budgets are about making choices, how to spend money. So with that, I'm going to open it up to you all to discuss. Is there anything else in here or anything else on your mind that I didn't contemplate as we went through the process to deliver? Just one pause. The spreadsheets are already going to print. So that's going as the base budget that I'm going to deliver on April 1st. Anything we discuss here, we will add on to the budget resolution. So it will be adopted and incorporated in when we go to publish the final budget. So that's kind of how we're going to work this out. The key for tonight is to get a sense for the tax rates, because I have to advertise them in the next day. So everything's ready to go. We just have to plug a number in and send them to the newspaper. So with that, I will open it up to you all to give us guidance as to what you'd like to see.
Okay, so I was under the impression that the balanced budget did not include the 1 cent.
No, the balanced budget includes 1 cent for capital. So I've asked for, I'm going to ask for a penny on the meals tax to pay for the capital, because when our bead poll, we took a hit on that bead poll question.
Right.
We lost about $1 million a year going into capital reserves, from which we were drawing out the next year's capital projects. So instead of tapping into the savings to do capital projects, because that will go dry if you don't replenish your savings, I'm suggesting a penny on the meals tax, which will bring in about $920,000, close to $1 million, to pay for capital, but we'll do it in that fiscal year. So it'll pay for capital in this fiscal year in that budget.
So by capital, you mean reserves?
No. I mean,
You
pay
mean
for
capital
capital expenditures, new stuff that we, the tennis bubble, to pay for, what are our other capital projects? Yeah, I'm driving a
It's
blank.
okay. It's
There's a
all
lot
right.
of vehicles and equipment.
Well, there's four items in the CIP program that when we received it, that we went, we have to, Foley Lick Trail, we have to do it because it's tied to a grant funding stream that we would lose if we don't. So we programmed that money in. We had another one that was tied to a grant funding stream as well that we realized we had to use or we would lose it. I forget which one that is. But there are 4 projects that are out of the CIP that will be funded with that meals tax increase. And then as we move on, I would look to the next year looking for that same $900,000 and give that number to the CIP planning committee and say, look, our general fund contribution is going to be, your baseline is $900,000. If you want to go higher than that, justify it, and then we'll need capital reserves. If it's something really worthy, then we'll tap capital reserves, and I'll propose that to you all. But right now, this is to keep capital reserves in reserve.
As they are, okay.
As they are, yes.
And did you get a chance to follow up on the entity that that has caused the budget problem?
We are working, well, there's couple entities in the mix. The one is completely off the table. The larger of the two is something that we are working with other jurisdictions that have similar problems.
Okay.
To come up with a consolidated approach to how to answer that question.
So when you and I spoke in your office, you said, try and give me some leeway with the meals tax, and I wasn't sure what you meant by
Well,
that.
one of the things that I want to be cautious of as we move forward, and what I would advise you is a little bit of caution. We are in a really good fiscal time in terms of the economy. The economy isn't in a recession. We haven't taken an economic downturn in a few years. Even though we haven't seen a whole lot of revenue growth, we haven't seen any revenue decline either. My concern is I'm trying to keep certain powder dry for you as you move forward. As you get into next year or the following year, if we should see a fiscal downturn, do we want to be so constrained in a very staff-heavy organization that we're the only place we can go to find money is to cut staff loose? Or do we want to take a measured approach to leave some reserve for us to then adjust a tax rate to make up for any changes that might be happening in the economic condition? It's just a point of consideration for you all. I would just caution, I would be irresponsible if I didn't caution you to be prepared for a fiscal environment that isn't nearly as advantageous as this one may be.
When you and I spoke, we discussed Captain DeBoard's priorities, and you suggested that her main priority was actually a deputy town attorney, which
Yes.
interested me.
Actually, Maggie and I have talked, and although she is going to need to grow her force. We're looking 555, looking at other things like that. We're going to have to grow the force, and she's up against some priorities. But her interactions with the town attorney's office are somewhat intense sometimes. And she's told me in confidence that she is willing to, and I'm seeing if she's drawing a weapon over there one time. She is willing to forego the officers for a deputy town attorney because she feels it's that important for her operation and the operation in town. And so she said that. Now that is predicated on some other things. Maddie and I work really well together on overhires. So if we know we have a retirement coming up in 5 months or 6 months, I authorize her to hire one additional officer above her allotted required, or what her limit is, so that she can get that officer on the street, get it up. By the time the one drops out, the other one's ready to hit the street running. So I give her great flexibility in that. She comes to me, she talks about it, and we try to meet her needs. Things like when we did the whole sworn officer program, where we went out and put bonuses and leave, front-end loaded leave to get sworn officers in because they're a month to get on the street versus 11 months to get on the street. Things like that where we're able to work, and I give her some latitude and flexibility to get creative in how to fix these problems. And between those elements, she doesn't see the screaming need isn't as screaming, but she sees a higher priority being the deputy town attorney. Is that fair?
Well, I've taken up a lot of your time.
No,
Maybe other
that's
people
I'm
want
here.
to say stuff.
I'm here for you all.
Anyone else? Questions, comments on the budget? Do you say so?
Go ahead, sir.
So I met with PBAC this past week, and we were discussing the pedestrian plan. I was a little surprised to see, and thank you, Bryce, wherever you are. Great
I
job
think
there.
he's-
Awesome.
he's home
I
and-
am. That awesome resource there.
Yes.
I was a little surprised to see how many Tier 1 projects are still unfunded.
Mhm.
And we want to be a walkable, safe community. But in his very detailed presentation, the pictures are worth 1,000 words. There are corners and crosswalks where if you're in a wheelchair or you have a stroller, the only way to get there is to go into the street. For me, that's unacceptable. So I'm thinking we need to rethink this 1 cent meal tax, maybe it's a penny and a half, because I've identified, or they've identified some things that, quite frankly, when you see the picture, you have to ask yourself, why is that like that? And if we haven't funded them for whatever reason, to me, they're a priority just because safety. I mean, it's just, there's no visual aids, there's nothing there. It's, some crosswalks go into ditches, it's just, it's not conducive to be a walking community. So I'm gonna listen, but I just wanted you to know, I've asked them, and they did a great job of providing all the unfunded Tier 1 places. And Tier 2 isn't less important, it's just more money.
Right.
Right, a lot more money, and it isn't as critical as.
Right, to that end is, I believe, because the recommendation hadn't been officially adopted by PBAC and they weren't costed, it's hard for us to then budget against something that is not costed. But if you're looking at potentially doing a little bit more, that's great. What we could do is pigeonhole some money and say like $150,000 and just hold that spot as the recommendations come out, they get costed by DPW, and we can then apply that 150 against it. We did that for sustainability a couple years ago to success. Where we didn't know what we wanted to do yet because the plan was still fuzzy, but we put a placeholder number in place, let the plan formulate, got the projects, then we had the money there to then start implementation.
No, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
I think asking people to walk on the street with all the congestion that's going on.
I walk my dog, and I understand what I understand what you're saying.
I think we're better than that. So.
I concur, because walking down Spring Street, just a few blocks from town, we've got nothing. We have no crosswalks. And I did notice that Alabama got new stop signs on Alabama. There were already the brick crosswalks, and it's at Virginia. That used to be just at Florida, and now they have a four-way stop at Virginia.
One of the interesting thing about that is before we put the stop sign in, everybody was stopping at that intersection
That's because
of
it
the
was crosswalks. That's
I
why
would do it. Once I moved to town, I was
Yes.
driving up that way to go home, I'd stop and I'd see other people doing it. Just
That's why we
because-
walk on Spring Street, Spring and Nash, because you're roadkill. Okay, who was next? Bill?
I would agree with Signe in regards to the deputy town attorney. I think some of the projects that are coming down the road, you know, the workload is just gonna be substantial, especially with Metro, and, you know, some of the things that are going on. I think, you know, we're growing as a town, and I think, you know, it's basically, we're a community in which, you know, we have the right side of everything, and I think we have to, especially on the legal front, we have to make sure our, you know, our I's are dotted and T's are crossed, because you don't want to spend more money on litigation than you have to. So making sure we have you know, someone to buffer what the town attorney is doing, I think, is important. And, you know, maybe not now, because one thing I know, we review budgets, you know, 6 months down the road. And I think, you know, I think everyone's got some good ideas here. I think maybe 6 months down the road, I do think we should look at, and multiple council members have brought this up, and I think it's a valid point, in regards to the meals tax collection, and having somebody who, you know, even if it's a part-time person, just auditing and making sure that those fees are being recovered, because I know we've had success with the parking situation, and I do know that what's fascinating too was one of the things we did after I left town council in New Jersey, my mom became a part-time tax collector to take taxes at night, and delinquencies went down 17%, and her salary was paid for 10 times over, and they were paying her minimum wage. But just being available and open just made it that much more easier for people to do what they need to do. So I do think just by having somebody who can just audit that, I think would just pay for itself.
If I can just respond to that, it's going to be a question Signe asked me earlier this evening while she was ordering her dinner on the phone, and I was trying to get into my house to have dinner, is what the original envisioned idea was to have the county collect our real estate taxes,
Yep.
take the revenue supervisor, get like 15, 20 hours out of her cycle,
Right.
and then apply to that question.
Good, yep.
The issue, though, that came up is we did check with the county. The county is interested in pursuing this. And they're talking to their IT people, and they think it's doable. Our problem is that we're basing this on a Loudoun County model, where Loudoun County collects for their town. Well, the Virginia State enabling law is specific to Loudoun County. So we're gonna have to add it to our legislative program and carry the water, and we're still a year away from that
Okay.
all taking effect. or at
We
least.
probably would have been anyway,
Yeah.
but this way it could be completely set up
Right.
to roll out.
Thanks, Dylan Rule.
Yes. That's it. If I can just back up to your point previous, the deputy town attorney, can I ask, at least I don't want to put you on the spot, but how much, if you had a deputy town attorney, how much of the contract legal work that's going out could stay in-house potentially? So what I'm saying is we have a net, or gross here, what would be the net? Would there be any savings on the net?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I would say it would be more than 50%. I mean, certain things we can't send out. I mean, you,
Why are we discussing this?
I mean, the explanation was, I forget what the number of hours was. It was like a minimal 250 hours for the amount that an in-house person can do. And to mention as well, not a lot of collections get to my office, but the big ones do get to my office. So with someone that could be dedicated to do collections, not pinging for the accounts, but to actually do the court
Right.
work for the collections and collect the paperwork and pleadings that need to be done for that could be improved dramatically there.
And then, just one more thing, if that's okay. Again, I think
Yes.
this is more of a mechanicism of down the line, but I think it's important to say now because in the future, it needs to be addressed. I think the IT stuff is great as far as the updating and everything else. I do know that I would like to see the business process for doing business in town versus how residents can do it. It's a little different. If there's a way to kind of streamline it to make it kind of the same in regards to, like whether it's coming to HMC to pay bills versus, online, just make it a little bit easier if that's possible. I think that would be a monumental step in the right direction, especially since we're having a metro coming in, and that's going to be a modern corridor. I think we need to be a modern town in aspect.
From a financial perspective, it's the last phase of the Muse implementation, so we are at that point.
Okay.
So that's the next thing up. But I would say even more importantly is we're going to implement InterGov, which is a land use enterprise system that focuses on CD and DPW building permits and the like. And it's all the same company, all the same portal.
Right.
So we'll be then incorporating that into the online customer-facing portal as well. And that I authorized to start immediately because if we didn't hit a window, we were going to be delayed like 6 or 8 months to start because of the way the projects were unfolding for this company. So I authorized it immediately so we can get started now and be done by this time next year as opposed to be just getting started this time next year.
Because again, I think that can save us money and more importantly, reduce costs and
Without
make
a
it a
doubt.
much more efficient way of doing business because that's what we're doing.
So if I can backtrack to Cesar's point, how much do you think is going to be necessary just from your rough?
So these only
Swag.
have single, double, and triple dollar signs.
All right.
So and again, I'll work with them
Yeah.
to get it.
Just,
but,
okay.
I mean,
Just for planning purposes.
a swag of
yeah.
$1.50 is,
All right.
A swag of $1.50s?
Yeah.
I don't even, are you speaking English?
$150,000.
I know what he's
Yep.
I'm tracking them.
I know, it's not that I'm not worried about you guys.
I know what a swag is.
A swag is one of those
Different
things that you
tiers.
take
No,
with
no,
the- yeah.
It's a stupid,
No, scientific.
So,
okay,
Wild.
scientific.
did you want to say something?
Yeah, Pradeep, did you have any questions?
So I would like to address the O&M portion of this. One of the things that I really think would be a mistake for us to cut is the family fun days, the farmers market family fun days. They do not appeal to me at all as a human. However, when I walk downtown, anytime one of those is happening, the place is swarmed with mothers and little kids. And that's good for our businesses, that's good for our residents, that's good for everything. And to cut out that just seems like a mistake on my part. And Cindy, if you disagree with me and you've been trying to get rid of it, just.
No, Cindy very, very much wants to keep it, and she's very passionate with it. The 3,500, is that a delta, or is that the program as a whole?
That was not the program as a whole, that was a portion of it that we were getting through the grant you just saw on the consent agenda that was coming back to us from the arts Herndon. That's no longer coming back to us.
But are you still
So
gonna?
it cut it in half, and then it would eliminate the adult performers that we were adding to the market side, like Chris Matthews and Al and so on, who have been performing in there just to kind of add some ambiance to the market. So it cut that plus half of the kids' performances.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable cutting any of the kids' performances. And, you know, for the amount of money, it's, to me, it doesn't make any sense, because the downtown is just hopping whenever there's a family fun day. The other question I had, and I asked Bill about this before, Cindy, was we looked at downtown events O&M, the third item on the operations and maintenance list. And that seemed to have Nature Fest and, I mean, all kinds of.
No, Nature Fest is not part of that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Because that was in John's priorities list.
Which one?
Well, actually, it was in the notes when I received the budget.
Yeah, the third one.
So-
The downtown events is strictly the events.
Oh,
that
no,
we were
not the
adding
downtown
down.
events, there was no detail on those. I told you they were a separate item, but there was no detail on downtown events.
So what were you?
Is that fireworks? Are those
No,
fireworks?
so the downtown events were the things that we've added the last couple of summers down on, particularly on Town Hall Green, outdoor movies, the splash day, the just outdoor games. They were mostly Saturdays during the summer. Last year, we added a part-time seasonal position to program that. So in this budget, we have a part-time position now who's scheduling those, so they'll run for the duration of the summer. And it came about as part of the initiative with the meals tax, to help market the downtown area. And we went from marketing pieces to actually the events. So the last 2 summers we've been doing that.
So you're okay with cutting that what was it, $15,000 or $25,000? You're still gonna have an awesome.
No, we're not okay.
They're never okay. Look around this room. Maggie's not okay with the 2 officers, but she's living with it. Ann has things, and everybody here has something they're not okay with in this process, I guarantee it. So
Okay.
we all have things we aren't okay with.
But basically what we're doing
It would-
is spending less but still doing the same events, or?
It would take this away.
So I would like us to keep in, just to do that, I would like us to keep in most of the stuff that we do that brings people to the downtown. And that would be the Family Fun Days funding. I'm not quite sure what the difference between the first P&R rec event and the second one is. One is community events, kids at Hope staff plus O&M, and the other one is downtown events, O plus M, or O&M. But if those are things that bring people downtown and keep the downtown lively, and a small hike and a tax that we're already gonna have to hike anyway, we'll keep that in there. I want to
Do you want me to clarify that?
Yes, please.
That the community events piece, and really maybe community outreach, I don't know what you want to call it, but we've been asked to look at team programs. We've been asked by Hutchison to get involved with the Project Hope, and we have a pilot of that going right now. We've been asked by Clearview and St. Joe's to do some after-school type programming for them. So any or all of that kind of falls into this category. We were trying to allocate some funds for staffing, for instructional staff, to provide and respond to those requests. we just started yesterday the Project Hope Piece pilot with Hutchison.
And is that at Hutchison or at the community center?
They go out to the individual schools.
Because Hutchison is able to provide the transportation because of their Title I situation and their C3 grant that's part of the community policing initiative that Project Hope is, and that Maggie and her staff are involved in. We've been asked to do a lot of different things, so it was just kind of a full piece of money in order to be able to respond to one of those items. It seems like the Project Hope is the one that's most feasible and realistic to actually implement on the full school year basis next year, depending on your decisions to fund it.
The other things that I thought we should keep would be at least 30,000 of the difference between the grants requested and that second line, where it's 60,770.
Okay.
My recollection, if this is the number that I think it is, because it's not absolutely intuitive for me, I would like to cut out 30,000 for All Ages Read Together and then keep the rest. Is that what that is?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Well,
60,000
no,
is
yeah.
the difference between what we budgeted this year and the total request for the 2020.
Right, and All Ages Read Together didn't get anything last
Right.
time, and they asked for 30,000
Yes,
this
they did,
time.
yeah.
So I would like to keep 30,770 in there. So that's mine.
I don't really agree with
I
that.
don't agree with that either, but,
Okay.
all right, well.
And I will tell you as a Rotarian that we work really hard to raise money for the kids' books, and that's age, birth through 5.
So I'm saying.
I'm not
take
against
it
reading.
out. I said take it out.
Right.
Right, but you're including everything else as one swath, like exactly what folks have asked for. That's what you're proposing.
Well, because I went through and looked at them, so, but I mean, we can all.
As did I.
Yeah, I'm sure we did, so we should all chime in on it. I just went through what I thought.
Anyone else? Any comments? Do you have any preferences on the budget grant request?
I really don't. But I do think that, I think Councilmember Baker's comments last week were valid. I think we have to take a look at this holistically, maybe not this year, because, there are people who put in for grants and have expectations, but I do think that, based upon what, it is great that we can do these grants, and I think it does make us unique, but I do think we have to review that on an annual basis to determine whether or not they're feasible in some instances, because, we don't have a situation right now, but we might have a situation like we did in 2008 when we had a three sigma event with housing and some of taxes, and, we don't have those situations and things baked into, I do think we have to review this annually, and, maybe not this year, but years to come, determine whether or not grants will be feasible because of revenues coming in and some of the issues that we have. But, right now, I think I'm happy to work within the confines of what we talked about, but I do think we have to review this annually to determine whether or not, grants should be an annual thing just because it's been done that way. I think we need to look at it as a holistic thing moving forward, but right now I'm for kind of status.
Yeah,
Does
I
that make
agree,
sense?
because I know at one point, we were getting lots of Boy Scout and Girl Scout groups coming in and asking for grant. They heard that the town had
Yeah.
grants, so they came. I don't recall us funding any of them, but.
And I hate picking winners and losers with those kind of
Yeah.
things too.
Because that was a real specific little group, whereas just personally, the town started many years ago supporting the industrial strength theater to get Eldon Street players going because they felt that was an important thing in the community.
Sure.
As well as Council for the Arts was the umbrella agency. We actually bought the land that Art Space sits on once upon a time with the vision of an art center. So these have been things in the vision. And if you go back in the 80s, which I have gone back and looked through minutes when we were getting ready to build the community center, and a lot of people in the community wanted a place for the arts in the community center. And they're bulging at the seams over there to do the things that they do. And I know that Art Space has done some collaborative classes with you over the years. And I'm sure we could probably get some of them to help collaborate on the farmers market fun days. And I know part of the PTSA, the Herndon High School, that's for the all-night grad.
Mhm.
So it does help our police department because they've got the kids all sequestered in one facility. And if they leave, they can't get back in. So they're really keeping the kids under their thumb and having 2 kids that have gone through that. So they keep them there.
We
so
have
that
jail
they're-
cells back here.
Right, they're not out running amok. And
Just saying.
I know our police do get involved with that all-night grad event, but it's a lot nicer to have them all locked up in the room. Just having 2 of them go through my house with all their friends many times.
So, remind me, because I feel like in the past, I know, I'm certainly happy to have the grant discussion and dig into this more, so that we can firm that up and the budget line, right? Because it's really the delta between what's requested and what
Right.
is the overage, right, is really the line item.
And quite frankly, if you want latitude on that question, that's fine. We can certainly accommodate it. It sounds to me like it's a consensus for another half penny on the meals tax and space roughly, and that would
Yes.
include a 150 P-back placeholder number. It include a
Right.
deputy town attorney. It would include all the downtown events, fun days, and the community events elements that went out. And then we're sitting at 131. There's $131,000 we haven't accounted for a half penny on the meals tax.
Wait, sorry, you lumped in
just
all
did.
those, you had me until you said
Okay.
all those
All right,
community
all right,
events. What
all
were
right.
all the
So,
community
yeah,
events?
the farmers market fun days, the downtown events, and the community events. So it would be lined, if you go down to
Yeah, I
your
got the
operations and
page, but-
maintenance, it is,
How much money for those?
it's 25, 40, 43, 500.
And then if we put another 13,000 in grants, I can give you an idea on some other things.
So I'm sorry, I got 193.5. What did you?
I have 150 for P-back, deputy town attorney's 125, 3,500 for farmers market fun days, 25,000 for downtown events, 15,000 for community events. We take off a half penny of the meals tax, which is $450,000.
So we're.
Subtract those out and I'll bring you to 131.
It's,
Yeah, it's 319, what your ads are 319,
131.
it leaves you 131 if you go half cent.
so sorry, so you're adding all that back in based on Signy's?
No, I'm saying the discussion
If we
here,
did,
if you
yes.
did what was
Okay.
discussed
We'll put
here
3.
without any, assuming that it's okay, with the group, where the group wants to go, then if we add those back in, to get to a half penny, you still have $131,000 unaccounted for. You're $131,000. That's before you talk grants and anything else.
And that would cover the risk manager.
But I thought, okay, so can we level set on this discussion though? I thought the discussion was, what you really needed tonight was to confirm whether we would, as far as at least advertising a potential
Yes.
rate
Yeah,
increase.
absolutely.
What we spend that on, to me, doesn't need to be determined tonight.
It's less of a consideration because we.
Because I'm not comfortable with all the things you just listed of what we're gonna spend it on.
Absolutely.
But we gotta have an idea of what's going on the list.
Right.
Right, I need a general idea so we can get to the rate. And if the rate seems, if you're comfortable with advertising another half penny, then that's what we'll do. These are the things that were discussed. I was just pointing out that if you were doing a half penny, ultimately, bearing in mind, we can advertise a half penny, and you could say, no, on second thought, we just want to keep it as
And then it
is.
can go
You can
down.
bring it
We can
down.
bring it back down.
You just can't go up.
We can't go
Understand, so
beyond
we're
it.
going, so the potential is 2.5 to 4, and we haven't advertised anything at this point.
No,
about the
it
meals
goes
tax.
out tomorrow.
Other than
Tomorrow,
reverse.
actually, I think it's tomorrow.
So the
Cents
meals
of
tax would go
it.
2.5 to
1.5.
4%.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
That's what would be
So,
proposed.
so just some context. It's better to position something here
Yes.
and end up here. Okay.
We all
It's
know
just-
that.
Well, but, I mean, I don't think this is really that big of a discussion. Just do it.
All right. So-
It's a discussion, Cesar, because there's 7 of us that make a decision, so
Right,
it's a
but
discussion.
I'm not being disrespectful.
You are. I'll point it out, you are. Okay? Because when you said, I don't think this is a discussion, I was having a discussion, so it is disrespectful to say it that way. I thought it was worthy of the question, I wanted to clarify it, and so the expectation is that you're respectful on that desire and what I was trying to do.
Okay, what you should have heard was what I said. I don't think this is that big of a deal, that we just agree in principle that we're gonna be publicizing something up here, and over time, we can kind of figure out what our priorities are, and we'll probably be lower than that anyway. So, sorry,
Yeah.
you're so sensitive.
That's what I heard.
And if I could point out
Thank you
just
for the
one.
non-apology.
But just one other element to this too, we don't have to break it in half increments, we can go down to a quarter. I mean, you could advertise at half,
Right.
and then, so it's 1.5 pennies advertised. 1 penny is accounted for in the base budget, and you can come back in this conversation and drop us back down to, only, let's say you have only $210,000, $220,000 worth of additional expenditures. We can always bring that back and advertise, and adopt 1.25.
Which is why we don't have to sort all this.
Yeah, absolutely, but
tonight.
it just helps
Which is
me to
what I
get a
said.
sense of where you're going, so we can then
And
frame the
set
next
the same thing.
conversation. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Because if we say one and we want other stuff, then we gotta,
Re-advertise.
Another 10
Re-advertise.
days, another
Yeah.
meeting, and it becomes a month later, and
Absolutely.
next thing you know, we're pushing July, and then it becomes a whole
Then
thing.
I'm sweating. and
Because we have
yes.
to worry about our AAA rating, and it becomes
we
a
don't
whole.
want Bill sweating.
No one
Yeah.
So I would like to suggest that we raise it to 1.5 and advertise it and discuss the rest of it later.
Is that acceptable to the group? Does that
Does anyone
seems to be
agree?
where we,
That makes to 4%, right?
yeah, it'll move to 4%.
We're advertising, we don't have.
You will get a lot of public comment at that point.
Well,
That's what we want.
What we
Yeah.
want, yeah.
do
Well,
it, yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say we comment, it would be more of a, what the heck's going on, in regards to that. But I think 1.5 might be too much. I
To
think.
advertise or to?
Yeah, to advertise. I think we have to be cognizant of that. It's like buying anything, if you put a sell price out there, we just have to, if we do 1.5, I mean, I don't think we have to, we don't have to fill that 1.5 either. So I'd rather be having a level that's higher so we can gear it down versus, being at some place and being over something that we were gonna project at anyway.
So do you wanna say 2?
I think that would be, no.
You want to say a 2%
No,
increase?
no.
Okay,
Less
I
than
was
that.
just clarifying
No.
because I was confused.
No, I want to say 1.5 is too high. I mean,
Right.
that's a too high ceiling because that just, I think incentivizes us to, oh, what else can we do? And I don't think that's where we should be. I think we should be at, what can we do with what we have?
So you are good with 1% increase rather than?
No, 1.25.
1.25, okay.
In that
So
range.
that makes 3 point.
I don't think that the public will be less distressed by 3.75 than by 4, and I would rather we give ourselves some leeway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go through and look at the P-back tier 1 recommendations, and I think we'll just focus on the tier 1 issues.
Mhm.
Quite frankly, these things should have been done a long time ago. So I think we're in a crunch because I think there's been a lack or a desire to meet the revenue needs over the last 10 years. And I just think we need to start preparing for what's coming.
Mhm.
And I think, we're playing catch-up. Had we increased it maybe, a fraction of what we're talking about over the last 10 years, we would have been in a lot better position. So that's kind of my view on it.
So is everyone comfortable with the town manager's interpretation of what we would like him to do?
What would we like him to do?
With the advertise with the average
Advertise
tax rate.
5?
1.5, yes, I'm okay with
I'm okay with that.
I mean,
that. Anyone have any other comments?
I got what I needed, thank you.
that. Okay.
1.5.
Okay. Does anybody need a break before we go to number 13?
No, keep
Okay.
going.
Okay. Ethics. Town attorney.
Yesterday afternoon, we started this discussion back at your request back in February last month. It continued on. You made some recommendations to me, or we had some discussions at the last work session, carried it over to this work session. I tried to capture what I heard from everyone, and I provided you with a draft of an amended code of ethics yesterday.
Yes.
And so I'm hoping everybody had that, could look at it. If not, I have several copies, and I even came prepared for the public, but nobody wanted to stay. So I certainly, this would be your, at your request, and I can only tell from comments whether or not I have captured what you're looking for. And I think most of the comments came from Councilwoman Friedrichs. Left the building.
So I had a question then on 4, where we talk about follow the law.
Going Monarch.
Is that the one?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, not that one. 3C, that's the one I wanted to ask about. I'm questioning, so is this an edit of our existing one?
Yes. So these are, what I tried to do, I did not do a legal edit,
Yeah.
ordinance edit, because it would have been too confusing, I
Yeah.
think. So what I did is where I added headings to what we currently have.
Yeah.
And I was getting ready to pull what we currently have up on the screen.
Yeah.
What's in the black is the existing language, what's in red is new language. And what I did on that number 3 was break up 2 paragraphs into 3. So this is existing language where I've just broken it up and I've added the references for the authority for those directives. Is there a specific question?
Oh,
or that's
okay,
more
so,
of a-
yeah, because I was just curious, I mean, I guess, I know we've certainly talked about making sure that we essentially direct everything to the town manager, but there's certainly places where, like, as I read this, as I read this over the weekend, it just seemed more literal than I remembered it, in that, you know, when I was chair of PBAC, I didn't go to Bill for everything when I was chair of PBAC, I went to Bryce. So, is that still
Right,
the?
yeah, and that's still true, and you'll notice this
Expectation?
says should instead of shall.
Okay, so it's softer.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it also, in your handbook, you have more discussion about what things, and here he is now, so we can answer that.
Right.
So basically, this was just a should, it's not a shall, and so, my goal in breaking those out was to highlight and emphasize, so it sounds like that occurred, because you noticed it more
Yes.
this time. Bill, they're talking about number 3. 3C.
Oh, right
Let
here.
me
you wanna
get
see?
it up.
Just where it says directs to the town manager, and my thought was, I think there's, I don't want to, I don't want you to be the only kind of point of contact for both the council and boards and commissions. I think that's inefficient, right? To have you
I
be
think that gives
directed.
you, I think it gives me latitude to refer you to particular staff members.
No, but what Lisa's saying is it already does give some flexibility in there, which is what I
And
was
it
asking
also
for.
says significant.
Significant.
Right.
Requests. So
Right.
if.
So there's some judgment there.
If Councilmember D'Aquila is just asking Bryce to put an item on the agenda or something for PBAC, he's not going to
That's-
approve
and that's
Bill.
fine.
He's not, or even something as simple as making a request for some routine information.
And also too, if it is significant and you err, and you task John Irish with something really major to do, and John calls me and goes, what do I do with this? I'm gonna assume it was probably just an error of omission instead of commission. I'll
Yeah.
call you and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
And yes, if you're really insistent on it, then, and you go, but we're gonna try to keep it, I think we can keep it in the family, assuming that people are acting in good faith unless it's really egregious. So,
And we just
I
had
think it's
to,
fine.
at one point, it was even before I got on council, but also during the time that we had some council members really taking up a lot of staff time. And so we need to be cognizant of that.
And that's when I'd pick up the phone and call
Yeah.
and say, oh yeah, by the way, it might seem minor to you, but it's major to their operation, you probably need to talk to me, and we'll try to correct it. It's just, you made a mistake, it was, that's what I'll assume.
Really, the exception, I think that is abused, but,
Right.
does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
That's all I need.
So on screen now is the current format and language, and you'll see that basically I took C and D and put them under number 3, just to break them out for emphasis. I will say that I spent quite a bit of time on the preamble, trying to pull out the words that you used the last time we were together, and trying to capture the essence of what I understood you were trying to capture in this ordinance. I don't know whether I was able to do that or not, but just so you know, that's what I tried to do.
Thank you, Liz.
Did look at other examples even from other states. It includes your oath of office.
Right.
Which everyone takes.
Right.
All officials. It includes language from the Conflict of Interest Act that is throughout all 4 of the specific responsibilities. It had a lot already was there, but I was hearing that the council, or at least some of the council wanted to, that I did hear from, wanted to frame up what the responsibility, give a context for the responsibilities. So I'm happy to make any edits, any comments, leave it the way it is.
So thank you for doing this. This is really good. Actually, number 2, the integrity and respect one. Since we talked a lot about social media use as well, so probably, this applies to social media use.
It absolutely does, yeah.
If we put that
did
in
before.
writing, that would probably take care of some of the things that may possibly happen because of, sometimes not
So-
knowingly also.
Yeah, I mean, I read this, I'm not sure it defines that, Jen.
It does not, but it doesn't exclude it. So I would say this covers any way that you could communicate it. Skywriting.
So if a council member were to, let's say, take it upon themselves to attack or go after an individual, business, that's covered here.
Well, yes, I think that what it says specifically is shall treat the public, town staff, and each other in a respectful and courteous manner, and refrain from refrain from behaving in a certain way. Now,
Well, then, okay,
it
let's say-
doesn't
let's
limit
say-
it to a
okay.
place or time, it never did.
All right. I guess the behavior piece, so let's double click on it. Let's say someone gets drunk a lot in public, right, and it's become noticed. How would that be covered here?
A council member?
Yeah.
I think that would be up to an individual to go back to how do you bring this to the council?
Is that a public?
If it's a
Is
concern.
that a public or is that a private session? Does the public deserve
Oh,
to?
The public,
No, it's
no,
not
the
covered
public
by
hears
closed.
it.
Yeah, it's not
Public
covered by
hears it.
closed meeting.
No,
Yeah.
there's no exemption for that. So
Okay.
anytime you want to bring something to the attention, a concern, which has always been covered, it's expected that it's brought to the body for discussion.
Okay.
I like the impartial and faithful and impartial performance of
It's
duties.
in your
I know, but it's stated here, and I like that.
And this applies to all council appointed and board commission members.
Right,
So,
right.
In fact, we did have a very unfortunate member of one of the commissions who resigned after DUI. So, I mean, there are examples of it.
Well, that wouldn't have been covered by this. That was well, it could have been, but it was an individual's action on their own.
So why
But
do
he
you-
took it upon himself to say, you have not
Yes,
behaved
yes.
in, which makes you think a little better of him, but.
But in theory, this person didn't necessarily need to step aside
Right,
based upon this.
right.
Right,
So
we
that-
would have, somebody would have had to say, I disapprove of this person doing that, therefore
And
you
now
should censure
remember,
him.
all the state, and we'll switch back here because and remember that in order to remove someone, that's controlled by the state law in our case.
Yeah, I don't think
So
for me,
if you're,
Yeah, but
There's
it's.
not much you can do to be removed
Yeah.
from council.
Yeah,
I mean, there's specifics. It's
Yeah.
it's very specific, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Well, it's back further
Right.
here.
You can't circle.
Yes. These are the two sections that talk, I'm sorry, these are one section talks about forfeiture of office for certain crimes, felonies, and offenses against minors, and then the other section is, by the court upon petition for certain crimes of behavior.
so that would be a petition
Yes.
from us.
But certain, no, it's citizens.
Citizens.
Citizens, a certain number of
And
citizens.
there's a threshold based on the electorate that you have to reach on that petition. If I recall the code.
And,
Not that this is something we're.
I would say that the things that you decide to bring to council, that could have been what you're talking about. That could have been the individual's behavior in that case. But that's not what happened in that case.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bill?
Bill, sorry.
I think this is really good too, and, I think if the social media policy part of that, that's fine too. In regards to and Signy, I agree with you as well with the faithfully and impartially and independence, I think that's important as well. Would accepting endorsements from political parties be considered independent, or would that fall into this as well? Or is that just outside
Leave
of
that
scope?
up to you all. I tried not to, I will say this though, I tried not to put specifics in there to cover everything that might, we may think certain things
So-
now, that think certain things later on might.
So this could be up for discussion in regard,
Yeah.
okay, that's an interpretation, so, okay.
I'd like to return to, Pradeep, to your, my intention, I think, was from the last conversation that would be that we would have a separate social media policy. That I think I had reported that the LGA was working on a model ordinance. Loudon hadn't even adopted one yet, and they're the reason why everybody's adopting one. If that's okay.
I mean, the reason I was saying that is people use social media to express their opinions and views more often than, personally
Absolutely.
talking to people. And social media becomes worse because people can catch, screenshot But when I'm talking to Bill, he may not be able to record and he may not be able to prove that I said something.
Or
but
screenshot it.
Social media is, you know,
Yeah.
so that's why if we have something in place, you know, just in a precautionary manner.
Definitely for your protection, more
Mhm.
than.
So, we need to get something, is everyone okay with this, or do you want to tweak it some more?
I don't want to tweak it some more unless
Okay.
you want me to.
I'm just asking the rest of the party here, do they want to tweak it? Do they want to really drive Lisa Yates crazy?
No, no, really, I mean,
No.
you should, there should be like the Constitution, and I'm not being sarcastic here, a document that fits every situation for the use of council, for yourselves as well as everyone you appoint.
Well, I agree. I mean, Rotary, we got the four-way test. That's all it takes, and it pretty much covers everything. We know when we're being rude, crude, and repulsive, and we should not do that, so we usually don't.
Article 2 of Constitution.
And just to be clear, this is just for this council for this period.
No, this
No.
is, this
No.
is.
In perpetuity.
If
This is
the
going in the
next-
charter.
Yes.
Unless
Well,
somebody.
no,
changes
it's in the
it.
ordinance.
It's in the
If
ordinance.
It's not the charter.
Sorry,
It's-
one person at a time.
It's
My
in an
question is-
ordinance,
it's in an
not the
ordinance.
charter.
So it survives in perpetuity, it doesn't reconstitute.
No.
Okay.
It was adopted by in 2015 by that council, which was 2 councils ago. And then this council has chosen to improve it, and as another council may or may not.
Right. And I think it will just be an ongoing process because technology and things change.
And it needs to be vague enough so that it encompasses all those things.
Yep.
So is everyone comfortable with this?
I'm fine with it. And if we have we're having a social media separate, fine
Right.
with that too.
At
I
this
see.
point, it would be earliest, that I don't know if we want to put this on budget meeting. The earliest would be the April meeting.
Because we need to advertise it.
We don't need to advertise, but I mean, we could put it on next
Just
one.
exit.
We could,
No,
it would
we should
be
put it on another
it
work
would
session
be
and public hearing.
unusual
Yeah.
to
Okay.
do that.
Just
Follow
asking.
the normal procedure.
And then
Um,
after that, then we can put it on our website where people can actually find it.
Yes, I actually think the intent was to put the current one on there immediately and follow.
I haven't
the-
seen that yet, but I
No.
might have missed it.
No, we haven't. We kind of pulled back, waiting to hear
Okay.
what was going to come out of this meeting.
Okay.
And then determine how we wanted to proceed. But I think it's appropriate on the council page on the website as well as the boards and commission pages.
Okay.
Since it's
So-
applicable to both
So,
bodies.
so my question
All
would
bodies.
be an April budget meeting or not? I mean, this could be a consent, or you might want to showcase it as, bring attention to the fact that you're actually,
I like that idea, showcasing it. Because
You
it's
want
a
people
very.
to comment on
um,
that? Just saying.
that's true too.
Okay.
Well, and if we put it on the consent agenda, we actually can make a comment.
Only in off times, right?
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
only now.
we can, but the
on
public
it.
can only do it
Yeah.
Right.
during the beginning of the meeting.
Or during your comments at the beginning of the meeting, you could reference something on the consent agenda.
Right.
But I would like the public to see it before we,
Published.
Oh,
We should
once-
make it a public hearing then, or at least a general item.
General.
At least make it a general item.
I'm just waiting for,
It will go, as soon as it goes on an agenda, it will go out. So it'll be on the work session agenda,
Yeah.
followed by a public hearing agenda,
Okay,
so
that's good.
it'll be out there.
So people
It'll
will
be
give us comments.
absolutely-
Yeah, I think we
All
should
right.
because a lot of people are already talking about it. It has become a hot topic. Based on the gentleman in the last public session, he was talking about, people were under the impression that we do not have any code of ethics, right?
Right.
So I think we should let people know that we're doing this.
Yeah, I agree, because he made a good point, because I did look at some other websites for other elected officials, and ours was,
another improvement that was never discussed when it was adopted where
Right.
else it might live. So I'm hearing an ordinance that would be a general item at first April meeting.
If it can get on that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just whether we want to on with the budget, I think was her question.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Like with all that's discussed, it's maybe during the budget.
Yeah, maybe we should do it the following
We
one,
can do
just
it
to
in
give
May.
it
Not
some.
on the
Well, both of them in
It's
April are,
on
yeah,
the
budget.
Don't you
Right.
want people at these meetings?
That's true.
Might as well just do it in April.
All right, let's do
Oh,
it
it's more
for
just
first
the
April.
length
When
of the
people
meeting
come for
and
budget,
the-
they come for budget, so.
But they have to know we have ethics.
Yeah, I know.
His statement wasn't, you don't have one, you just don't abide by it.
You're going to also have each one of you reading your entire disclosures. So
Right.
they're gonna know you
Yep.
fiscally and they're in every way ethical.
Okay, so that's
Do our
it.
best.
You know what we're doing? You know what we're doing?
I think we have.
April, or we said April.
All right, April. So, now we're at roundtable. Who wants to go first? Jim?
No, thanks. I'm good.
Bill?
Just had a youth advisory council meeting last week. Tia Gary was the chair, and we're going over, they went over some steps in regards to we're gonna be doing an actual Robert's Rules meeting in June, where they'll be actually running a meeting and doing the process, and so walking them through the whole thing. And it was really cool when they were looking at an agenda. They're like, oh my goodness, there's just a lot of stuff here. I go, that's actually a light meeting. So, but explained the difference between a work session and we walked through all those things, and it was just a really good conversation, and they were really excited. So, June timeframe, we're going to have a meeting based upon what they want to have happen, and then they will give us the information, and then let us look at it. So that's what they want to do.
Fun. Pretty?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay.
I attended 3 meetings, but one was affordable housing, another one was Dallas Regional Chamber of Commerce on Metro, and today Herndon Chamber of Commerce. I'll share with you the details some of the time with everybody, but those are the 3 events I attended last week and this week.
I too attended the Squillian meetings. The Community Forum on Housing for All was at the First Baptist Church in Vienna. Cesar is a recent convert there. It was very exciting. It was held by the NAACP, and there was a very, I would say, revivalist feeling in the room. It was quite nice. But definitely very goal-oriented about affordable housing. That group has become concerned because Fairfax County was told by some strategic task force that we needed 15,000 units of affordable housing in Fairfax County, new affordable housing in Fairfax County in the next 10 years. And the task force decided that they could only reasonably provide 5,000, and this group was motivated to challenge that. So, also attended Fallen Angels at Next Stop Theater, which was incredibly wonderful. Metro Monday was great the other day. Sheila Olam was our speaker, one of our speakers. She did a great job. At the Herndon Chamber of Commerce meeting today, Senator Voisko did a little rundown for us on the General Assembly results, and my personal favorite was the proffer law, which has been amended significantly, yes, improved. But she also discussed a number of other things, including which was some money for affordable housing, although never enough. I think it was $7 million, so very small. But lots of good things happened, and surprisingly, given how contentious the General Assembly was, they got an awful lot of stuff done. So that was fantastic. And I found out today that ArtSpace has not only started to have some really good press, but they also have been voted one of the top 3 galleries in Northern Virginia, or maybe it's Virginia.
Top 3 in Virginia.
In Virginia. So our little ArtSpace is moving on up, which is delightful.
Cesar?
Nothing really. Just to reiterate, PBAC, we had a great, awesome meeting focusing on, again, those, what I call pain points in the town, just looking at them, and really I want to tip the hat to those folks on that committee for all the work they put in, all the research, the walking, the time, really their commitment to make sure this is a safe, walkable, accessible community for everyone. So that's all I have.
Okay, I was downtown this weekend and people were all over the
Yes,
place.
they were.
So all of our establishments were overflowing with people wearing green stuff. So it was a good day for the
Sunday,
businesses.
St. Practice Day.
And at the Metro Monday, the folks from the county said that those bus surveys that they finished at the end of February, they're gonna be going back out on the road, talking to people in either late May or June. So
Good.
they're continuing to talk about that. And do we have any updates on the retreat?
Not at this point. We're putting feelers out, and I'm trying to get
Okay.
a good moderator is where I'm starting.
Okay,
That's, gotta have a moderator.
okay, there you
So,
go.
yes, I
Oh,
filled it out, yes.
None of the ones I sent you worked out?
I've,
Okay.
not quite yet.
Okay.
Not quite completely exhausted on that point.
Do you have any comments?
I do indeed. Number
Great.
one is I've been assured by Michelle that the PowerPoint will be added to Granicus first thing in the morning, so the 5:55 PowerPoint will get up.
Good.
The second thing is, I'm not sure if y'all were paid attention over the weekend, but the Board of Supervisors meeting in Arlington County on Saturday turned into a bit, I've already checked.
Okay.
Turned into a bit of a Donnybrook in terms of a lot of anti-Amazon folks showed up, and it got uncontrollable, and they had some order issues in the meeting. This is something that's been certainly on the chief's mind and on my mind over the past. This is why you see extra officers kind of drop in, and you might see them in the back, and they come in and out. Yeah, they got called out tonight. But we've tried to accommodate that. Well, we started talking about what would happen if things really got bad or whatever, and we need to put contingency plans in place for that. Fortunately for us, the chief, one of her great new hires, is a retiree from Fairfax County Police, who, in addition to spending some time on the SWAT team and various other things, was their workplace violence expert, did work with the Board of Supervisors on what their plans are in this regard, work with Vienna on their plans should something bad happen. So I've kind of turned up the heat on the chief to get a program ready to brief you all, because the BZA appeal is coming up. If you watch the BZA meeting, that got a little unruly during the BZA meeting. Amongst other things, I think the timing is right to put more attention on this. So we'll be talking to you probably in the next few days about bringing you in 2 by 2 to kind of walk you through if things got bad, what you ought to do. And just like a fire drill, for lack of a better term, kind of train you up and do a fire drill for you all. And part of it is too, if you think about it, is to get you out of the way so the police can do their work.
Yep.
And that's always that's one thing that Maggie and I've talked about extensively. If y'all are still hanging out, then their focus is their protection focus shifts. And so by getting you out of the way, it allows them to focus on the problem at hand more directly. So we will be calling you in the next few days, trying to bring you all in 2 by 2. And hopefully we get you all briefed before next Tuesday and let you all understand what we were hoping to do. And fortunately, it's just staff in the room, so this is not a surprise to anybody. Any questions on that at all?
I've gone through the active shooter building training.
It would be a lot of that, but it's also specific to things that we expect in that room, what something happens in that room.
I'm running. So
What's that?
I'm gonna run.
No, you're not. We're gonna tell you where to
No.
go.
You're gonna hide behind the
Stop.
dais.
That may be warranted.
There are some, like for instance, there's some certain protective measures that are in place because of court that will allow you to not necessarily run. Do some other things that we'll discuss in private.
And also,
with
we're
you.
talking about worst case scenarios. There's
Yes.
also situations where the mayor will give cues in order to control the room without having to leave, or to take sorts of actions that will require making a motion or whatever, so.
To kind of maybe
I don't know
de-escalate the
Just
situation,
use,
diffuse
yeah.
the situation, so.
You can be our trainer.
And my question, I guess, is this a safe arena
This room?
Yeah.
This room's not the best room at all.
Thank
This room is a trap, in my opinion, but it is what we have. I mean, it's just, it's
feel better already.
difficult because there's no, you have, your doors are right here, this is it.
Now, with that in mind, we're changing the lock system on that door to go to a key fob that we'll all have and be able to get out through that. And so we're doing some other things on that front as well.
I feel much better when we're in the bigger.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
I'll buy you a beer.
So that is all I have.
Okay.
On that happy topic.
On that happy topic, that
But I will
concludes
say,
our
I will say
agenda.
that when our
Is there a
officers
motion
here,
to
that's
adjourn?
Madam Vice Mayor,
why they're
seeing no
sitting
further
out there
business,
right
we
now,
will
so they
adjourn.
can see
I'll
anything that
second.
approaches.
Thank you.
All motion, all
That was
agree?
fast, that was
Okay.
Aye. Thank you, Sheila, you did a lovely job.
Thank you.